Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching ninth part of What If Naruto Became Curse of Hatred. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Breathing that is heavy and hard. As she struggled to breathe and open her eyes, the sound of shouting broke through the silence all around her. Besides what she was hearing, which sounded like bells, she couldn't tell what was going on around her. She could feel her whole body hurting and shaking. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't move except for certain small twitches in her toes and arms. The yelling got louder and louder until it was like an avalanche of sound. She could make out a few words, but not enough to put together a sentence. Where did she go? Was there death? She wasn't ready for it. No, she could feel it, her heart beating steadily and rhythmically against her chest. Before she knew it, light was stinging her eyes and making her very uncomfortable. She slowly and carefully opened her eyes, but then she felt terrible as she was hit by bright white light from a plain white roof. Now that she could turn her head, she looked around her. Nothing but white was there. Even her hospital gown was white to match the room. If it weren't for her crazy pink hair, she might have been hard to tell apart. As her movement started to return, she slowly raised her arms and pushed herself up into a sitting position. Her whole body hurt like hell. As she put her hand on her chest to steady her breathing, it got harder for her to breathe. She looked around until her eyes fell on a single person wearing a tan shirt and blue pants. Her emerald green eyes were tired and drained, just like the rest of her body. She can snore all she wants. She couldn't help but laugh at what she saw because the moment she let out a single laugh, her body hurt. Was it so painful for her to do something as simple as laugh? I guess it didn't matter. Then she turned her head and looked out the window at Konohagakure, the strongest hidden village in the 5 great nations. It was a huge place. She was shocked and interested as she tried to remember what had happened to her. She wondered how she got here. How long ago was it? Then it hit her like a wave. They were dressed in black like ebony wood and held a sword made from darkness. Their eyes were red like roses and cold and empty like a dead fish, and their blonde hair sparkled like gold. Screaming, Naruto. At the top of her lungs, Sakura's sad song echoed through the hospital and woke Ino Yamanaka from her beauty sleep, causing her to fall out of her chair with a loud thud. She was caught off guard by the sudden outburst. There were people outside arguing, but the scream stopped them. She wasn't the only one who heard it. As Ino picked herself up and ignored the pain, she saw her best friend looking down at her lap with a tired look on her face, as if she had just come off the battlefield. Sakura. Sakura, it's me, Ino. Everything is fine, you're safe. You've been sleeping for a week. How do you feel? Ino asked her best friend while rubbing her back gently to comfort her. But Sakura didn't hear her because she was thinking about a girl with yellow hair. Was he really there? No, of course it wasn't. How did he get away? How on earth could he still be alive? Were some of the many questions that were going through Sakura's head. When the door to the room opened, the Godem Hokage, Tsunade Senju, her parents, Kakashi Hatake, whose arm was in a sling, Might Guy, and an old man with bandages on his head walked through. This woke her up. Sakura looked around at the other people and wondered why they were all here. Then her mother sat down next to her and sobbed into her shoulder, squeezing her hard. Thank God you're okay, my baby, Mebuki Haruno said as she squeezed Sakura even tighter. The girl carefully wrapped her arms around her mother's body, sharing her warmth, while her father watched from next to her with a thankful smile and a few tears running down his cheeks. The scene made Tsunade smile, and she was glad that all the work she put into saving Sakura's life wasn't in vain. Kakashi smiled, and Guy made a nice guy pose with a big smile that glowed funny and said something about youth. He wasn't getting much attention. Then Tsunade did some tests on Sakura. The young Kunoichi was fine, except that she had less control over her movements, which would go away in a few days. Well, I can say with pride that I taught a determined student. There were times when things didn't look good for you, Tsunade said as she crossed her arms over her heart and smiled down at her student. The student tried to smile back, but her attack made her feel bad, and she couldn't figure out what had happened to her. That's the power of youth. Nothing can crush the pure spirit that shines within all of us. Guy yelled through sobs, while Kakashi looked like he was laughing at him. Guy and his team found us in the city. Guy also took you back to Konoha to get treatment. He had to take off his weights because he wouldn't be able to make it in time, Kakashi told Sakura, who nodded at her teacher. She yelled, I want the son of a bitch who did this to my little girl. I want to flay the skin off his corpse. Sakura was shocked by what her mother said. She had never heard her mother say something so mean. Tsunade spoke with a scowl on her face, trust me, after this, Ryu Yokaze will be hiding under rocks to get away from us. Their inaction had gone on for too long. It was time to attack and not take any chances, give in, or show mercy. Please excuse us, we need some time with Sakura to better understand what's going on, Tsunade said. Kazashi nodded and led his wife away, though she didn't look happy to be leaving her daughter's side. Tsunade put her hand on Sakura's pupil and said, I'm sorry to ask this of you, but we need information that only you have. If you remember anything from your attack, tell us. You can trust us after all. What was Yokaze wearing? Did he say anything? Sakura's lip trembled as she clenched her fists against the fabric of her hospital gown. It was Naruto. I saw him, Sakura said, remembering the face all too well. His brows were lighter and his whisker marks were gone, but he still looked like an older Naruto, though something dark had changed about him. People in the room just looked at each other confusedly when she said, he's alive. What she was talking about was obviously not possible. As Tsunade tried to show her student that what she saw wasn't really what she thought, she said, Sakura, Naruto is dead. He's been dead for 2 years. No, it was him, I know it. Tsunade. Sama, he's still alive and with the Akatsuki. Naruto is Ryu. They may have brainwashed him or are forcing him into their organization. He would never join a group like theirs unless he had to, Sakura said, making Tsunade more angry with each word. What she was saying was nonsense and not true. I'm sorry Sakura, but Naruto is gone and will never come back. He died years ago, and nothing will change that. Even if he had survived at the Valley of the End, the S-rank shinobi that make up Akatsuki would have easily found him and taken the Kyuubi from him, where he would have died anyway. I'm sorry Sakura, but facts are facts, Kakashi told her. Sakura stared at him with wide eyes and was surprised that no one else in the room seemed to believe him. Sakura almost begged everyone in the room to believe her, but Kakashi. Sensei. He's alive, I just know it. I saw his face and it was Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki and Ryu Yokaze are the same person. We need to send out search parties to find him and bring him back to Kono. Tsunade, who was angry with her, stopped her from saying anything else. That's enough, Sakura. Tsunade yelled, her face showing that she was angry and unwilling to give in. Sakura, Naruto is dead. Gone, no longer alive, deceased. Sometimes when we're upset, we see things that make us feel better. You probably saw Naruto as a figment of your distress and comfort to keep you from going crazy. But what you saw was what you wanted to see. I'm sorry, there's no other way to explain this delusion. If you really believe Yokaze is Naruto, look at what he did to you. The scars that will stay with you forever. Let's talk later. But know this. We've all lost something, and if we hold on to it too tightly, we'll never move on with our lives, Tsunade said as she left the room, leaving Danzo Shimura behind. Shimura's face was calm and collected, and he believed everything the pink-haired girl said because she was one of the few people who knew what was going on with Naruto. As the two of them stood outside the room, Tsunade's face showed that he was thinking about what to do. It's no longer a case of passivity, Tsunade. Yokaze is determined to do something bad to us. He is a stain that needs to be cleaned up and a poison that needs to be thrown out. Danzo said this, and Tsunade knew he was right. Too long had Yokaze been free to kill their shinobi like sheep being led to the slaughter. It was their turn now. Danzo, I have a mission just for you. Your job is to kill Ryu Yokaze, and he will die. Get your men together and hunt him down like the animal he is. No one cares about holding him hostage anymore. Just kill him, Tsunade said as she walked back to her office, leaving Danzo to stand there and smile. They were right. Naruto had a big impact on the people around him. He was making Tsunade into the Hokage she was supposed to be, cruel, smart, and never willing to give in or show weakness. He would get to work right away on it for Konoha. Naruto Uzumaki knew his time was up, but he had some tricks up his sleeve that would help him win. Too long, Tsunade's mind was filled with hate and anger toward the Akatsuki member. He had been killing some of her best shinobi without any shame or hesitation for too long. He was mean and didn't care about life at all, just like the rest of the Akatsuki. He had no morals or convictions. Yokaze was a wild animal that had to be put down, and the world had to be put out on fire. And they would break everything he cared about. First it was Shino, then Lee, and now he attacked Sakura and almost got her. Now was the time for him to feel what it's like to be hunted and how scary Konoha could be. If only she knew how true what she said. A few days later, in the land of spring, there was warm weather and lots of sunlight. The land's eternal winter had ended, and a new season had begun, which everyone was happy about. There was now plenty of money and flowers everywhere in the land of spring, which was green and full of light and color. Two people were walking along a road. Their cloaks stood out against the bright colors of the area they were in. One didn't pay attention to his surroundings. He was focused on the road in front of him and his goal. The other, on the other hand, was amazed by the flowers and leaves. What she saw was the exact opposite of what she saw at home. Even though her home country was dull, flat, and mostly dark, it rained all the time. She liked the change of pace in this country. Naruto Uzumaki told his partner Conan, "We should get there in a couple of hours. I should warn you that the people we'll be meeting aren't exactly the most social." Conan nodded, knowing that when he said something, he really meant it. When Conan asked Naruto, "Just who are we honoring with our presence?" Naruto didn't answer because he was thinking about what to say and didn't want to say anything that could bring the wrong impression. He's a former contemporary of the legendary Sannin. His name is Hirako. For his entire life he devoted himself to the study of shinobi and kekkei genkai. He's been an associate of mine for a while, performing experiments and unraveling secrets for me. He's also developed a technique that allows him to assimilate kekkei genkai into his own being, making them his own. Said Naruto while Conan herself that someone like that was real. But every time Hirako's name came up, it made her feel cold, like it was a forbidden word or something. "I haven't talked to Hirako in days. We're going to check on his progress in his lab in the land of spring, but don't touch anything, his work is fragile and you don't know where it's been. You could get sick. Hirako isn't a nice person, and you wouldn't get along with him. He does unorthodox experiments. And he's willing to break the laws of nature to get what he wants. Like me," warned the blonde Uzumaki to WH. Kunoichi with pink hair was getting ready for a trip outside of the village back at Konoha. She had to find him. She needed him to answer her questions and meet with him. Everyone was against her because they all thought Naruto was dead. She saw him in all his flesh, blood, and bone. He was there, and she had to talk to him. After getting her things together, she was now fully dressed in her kunoichi outfit. She had been doing some sneaky things in the village. She overheard Tsunade and that old man named Danzo talking about Yokaze's whereabouts. They said he was going north or northeast. She decided to go to the land of spring, which was a prosperous trade nation, because they might know what she needed to know. So she jumped out of her window and ran out of the village to find her teammate, who she thought had died. Members of the Akatsuki with blonde and blue hair were probably looking for a cliché entrance, maybe a sign, as they waded through the forest in search of the entrance to a mad genius's lab. Still, the man with blue eyes knew they were getting close to their goal. He kept looking at the trees and rocks for any sign that Hirako was there. He scraped his fingers along the bark of a tree, leaving deep claw marks in the wood. Naruto turned to look at his partner and said, "We're close, not much farther now." His partner nodded and the two of them then went their separate ways. Naruto and Conan did find the metal door he said they would find carved into the ground, but it was hard to see because plants had grown over its obvious features. While sweeping away some leaves, Naruto looked for the doorknob. He found it quickly and was about to grab the handle when he suddenly became aware of the feeling of chakra in the sound of breathing. He then turned his attention to the direction to his right. Before he looked in that direction to see what had caught Naruto's eye, Conan saw this. The blonde looked around the forest with his red eyes and didn't see any flickers of chakra or sharp gasps. He wanted to scratch his head, but he didn't because the air around him was heavy and tense, almost suffocating. He tried to use his more sensitive senses, but to his surprise, he couldn't pick up on any feelings in the air. He would still be tired, though. He then turned his attention back to the door, opened it, and jumped down. Conan then came in and closed the door behind her. After that, they went down some stairs that took them deeper into the ground. But Naruto was right. There was a man outside the door wearing a black cloak, an Oni mask, and a katana over his right shoulder. The root agent used his short-range transmitter to ask his boss, targets inside Danzo. Sama. Shall we get the bombs ready? He got a response. Do that, and we'll build tombs for Hiriko and Uzumaki, Danzo said through the transmitter. Other root agents joined the masked Oni agent, and they all set off large explosives on the ground. If the earth was hollow, the force of the explosions would shake it up and cover the caves below with dirt and rock. There wasn't much light coming through the caves, so Naruto and Conan let their legs lead them through the dark, murky depths. They jumped over rocks and into cracks as they went. Naruto stopped in front of a big door that he thought led to Hiriko's hideout. The man in the cloak then put both hands on the hard metal and pushed very hard. The door was stronger and heavier than expected, as the blonde had to work a little to get it open. Loud scraping and clanging of metal could be heard throughout the earth. Naruto pushed the door open so that someone his size could go through, and Conan followed closely behind. Soon, they could see a green light on the edge of their field of vision. It got brighter with each step they took until they had to cover their eyes with their hands because they were used to the dark. They made it over the rocks with one last push and were now standing in Hiriko's hive. There were alchemy jars, vials, and tubes all over the room's tables and shelves. The air smelled like a dead body, and it almost made you want to throw up. Bodies hung from the walls by nails and wire were all over the place, and there were bloodstains on the floor and walls and small animals, from reptiles to mammals, pinned to boards and some even cut open. Electrical rods and circuits sparked electricity that added some blue to the sickly green. The ground was covered in a cold mist that shook bones and grabbed at the spine, giving Conan the chills. This wasn't a place for humans. It was a place for people who had given up being human. Then they heard clinking and mushy sounds. When Conan turned her head to see what was going on, she saw two benches with bodies on top of them and someone standing on a stool on their tiptoes with a syringe in one hand and a saw in the other. Both of their hands were clearly bloody and dripping red liquid everywhere. This got the man's attention, and he looked over his shoulder to see who was in his house. Naruto called out, "Hiriko." Conan could see that he was a young man, probably not much older than a child. This made her feel a little uncomfortable because she saw an image of innocence being broken in this way. His hair was as white as snow, and his eyes were blood red and hungry. Most of his body was bandaged, including most of his face. His coat had 3 leather straps around the collar, and the sleeves were even longer than his arms. Because he was working with tools, the sleeves irritated his arms. He had 2 windswept bangs on either side of his forehead. Hiriko jumped off the stool and put away his medical tools. "Oh, what a shame. If I had known you were coming, I would have saved my experiment for later." "What a shame." As Hiriko sighed in fake frustration, "I was just about to extract their bone marrow, guess that'll have to wait." "And who is this? A friend? A lover? Maybe a new subject I can test?" Hiriko asked as he turned his attention to Conan. Conan felt defiled by his stare and had to hold back a defiled look because she felt dirty, maybe even contaminated by his eyes. To keep up her calm exterior, she had to literally bite back her calm. "I gave you enough test subjects, so I expected to see some results. I'm disappointed with how little you've shown me, though. Have you become so lazy with your gluttony that you haven't been able to make anything useful?" Naruto asked Conan as he took a small step closer, his body tensing and his eyes burning like fire. "Be calm now. After many experiments and the careful study of Kekkei Genkai, I have achieved something that, if used correctly, will break every conceived bloodline in the world," Hiriko said, staying calm in the face of Naruto's threatening gaze. The Uzumaki was not someone to be trifled with, and neither was his master. In fact, Hiriko was the one who, at Madara's request, did experiments on Naruto's body, giving him more endurance, speed, strength, and stamina. His words made Naruto's eyes widen as he said, "I have crafted my own Kekkei Genkai." He made a Kekkei Genkai, which means that the bloodline wasn't passed down through lineage but was actually made by humans. "In my pursuit of a perfect body, I have collected and harvested many shinobi's Kekkei Genkai and made them my own. However, I always lacked a 5th element, as you can say. While originally I had a Kekkei Genkai in mind, I found my thoughts wondering at the possibilities. What if we were to create a Kekkei Genkai, injected into shinobi and granting them capabilities of those born from a clan with an inherent Kekkei Genkai? What if we were to create a Kekkei Genkai, injected into shinobi and granting them capabilities of those born from a clan with an inherent Kekkei Genkai? What if we were to create a Kekkei Genkai, injected into shinobi and granting them capabilities of those born from a clan with an inherent Kekkei Genkai? I soon collected samples from multiple Kekkei Genkai from around the world and from Shinobi clans and began my experiments. Most of them only succeeded in being failures, but a breakthrough happened. Using select Kekkei Genkai, I was able to stabilize the blood, enzymes and chakra. I soon found my subjects reacting to the new influx of power, and the results were remarkable. Kekkei Genkai that responded to their hosts. An artificial Kekkei Genkai was created. But with all great discoveries there must be consequences. Shortly after acquiring the Kekkei Genkai, the subjects' bodies would break down. Their white blood cells recognized the foreign power and proceeded to attack their host's body foolishly, despite the fact the Kekkei Genkai had melded with their bodies and the process was irreversible. Their own bodies were destroying them from the inside at a rapid rate. I've been looking for hosts with strong recuperative powers and life force, preferably those from the Uzumaki and Senju clans. If only some were available. Shame. After hearing Hirako talk about his whole life, Naruto was both interested and amazed. He was interested in the idea that someone could make a Kekkei Genkai and amazed at how valuable something like that would be. But the part about the Uzumaki and Senju didn't sit well with him because he was related to both groups. Naruto put his hand to his mouth and asked, "Where is this Kekkei Genkai? And what are the chances of beating this?" While Naruto did something, Konan just stood there and watched. She felt the same way, though she was more upset about other people dying in such an evil experiment. She also didn't know if this Kekkei Genkai was a gift or a natural crime. Then Hirako went up to a computer and typed in a few commands. A compartment opened up in front of him, revealing a single tube filled with blue liquid. Hirako took the tube in his hand and looked it over, amazed at what he had done. "Right here, the only sample left, I might add. I've been meaning to make more. Survival odds. 15%, Hirako said, which made Naruto raise an eyebrow at him in surprise. The crazy genius then gave the tube to the Sharingan user and twisted it between his fingers. And of course, not to mention the fact that if survival is ensured, subjects tend to break down mentally at a slow rate. Only 50% were able to stay sane, until they killed themselves, that is. Such a shame, I had further uses for them. Wow, power in such a small tube. It's amazing, Naruto said, but then he felt a disturbance in the force. Yes, that was meant to sound like a pun. It was closing in on him from all sides, and he could feel it. This was seen by Konan, who asked what was wrong. But the blonde didn't answer. At that moment, shock waves shook the lab and threw most of the contents to the ground, almost making all three of them fall. As Naruto was about to be crushed by a big rock, he took a step back and thought of what was true. Naruto yelled, "We're being attacked. Get to the exit." Hirako and Konan ran away, with Naruto following behind them. There are only two ways out, and one is now blocked by rocks. We'll be running right into the enemy through the other, unless I plan to die, which is not how I plan to die, Hirako said as he dove through falling rocks and other debris. The ground was shaking more and more. When Naruto said, "We're not escaping," Konan stopped in her tracks and stared at the man with a worried look on her face. Hirako also stopped when she heard what the blonde said. "We'll die in this place, and the stones shall become our tombs." While Hirako hugged Naruto from the side, which looked a little awkward, Konan widened her eyes at his hidden message and flew into the blonde's arms. Naruto then sent even more chakra into his eyes, where his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan pattern appeared just as a big boulder was about to fall on them. On the ground, there were a lot of explosions going off, and many root agents were watching the attack from trees. They had their weapons ready and were waiting by the only way out of Hirako's lair to surprise them from above. One of them was Dan's, and he kept his face straight and calm. When the explosion stopped, the ground was covered in dust, but Danzo's eyes and face were still blank. A little further away, the ground was moving all over the place, and rumbling could be heard and felt all through the forest. It was the sound of one long, bony hand clawing at the dirt and grass to get itself out of the dark holes it was in. After the hand, there was a spiked rib cage with three shapes that could be seen through the bones. The three then got out of the skeleton and landed on the soft ground. They looked around and saw that there was no danger nearby. It would be best to split up and draw their attention to different of us. Root is strong, and I don't want to fight them with all my might because I don't know how strong they are. The other two nodded in agreement. There is a city, a few hours north from here. It's the capital of the land of spring. Konan, you and I will head there. Danzo wouldn't risk an international incident, so the people in the city shall be our indirect hostages. Hiriko, I want you to head to the Land of Wind, to my base, Tsukaitate. There you will meet my Kokorin soldiers and they will see to it that you have a lab of your own. Naruto spoke before all three of them went in distinct directions. Although Naruto's mind was busy, he didn't know what Danzo's main plan was. He thought that he had come to finish the job he started years ago. Naruto lost track of Konin's chakra signature as she ran through the trees, which meant she had gone her own way to get to the city. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh. Danzo was a smart old badger that not many people took seriously enough. The man would break the rules to get what he wanted and never did anything without a reason. Some people might have thought he was a traitor because he hung out with such dangerous people, but there was no way to prove that. People thought he was up to no good with his shady dealings, but Dan's always had 3 steps ahead of them. The Sandaime Hokage was the only person he couldn't trick because they were close before. Naruto then shook those thoughts out of his head and kept going, not realizing that a metaphorical axe was flying at his neck. Someone from Root in the area told Danzo, they're going to the city, just like we planned. Good, now we move on to the next step. Call Toge and tell him to get the flower, Danzo said. His agents nodded and quickly left. Before Danzo could move, a swirling distortion appeared on his left, and Tobi, or Obito Uchiha as he is better known, stepped out dressed for battle. It took a little work to find, but I'm determined. Uzumaki will never know what he's in for, Obito said as he gave Danzo a scroll. The older man took it from the Uchiha and looked at it with the only eye that could be seen. Danzo said with his rounded, slippery tongue, you shall be the one to confront him when all the pieces on the board are set. Obito didn't seem to hear Danzo's order and instead disappeared in a swirling vortex while the elder went into the city. He got to the city an hour ago, pulled up his hood, and walked through crowds to avoid his hunters. If they were going to come after him at some point, he knew it wouldn't be this soon because Tsunade wouldn't let them. If she did, that would be a surprise. It was awful to him that if they killed someone, other people would want to get revenge. He hated how the cycle of hatred was based on pain and death. He knew that he was a victim and that he was also part of the cycle. However, we all do things, some very bad things, to further our ends. Because of this, some might say it was right, while others would say it was cruel. But who cared? People's views wouldn't change unless drastic steps were taken, which only made things worse. It was like a dragon eating its own tail. Then he felt a small weight in his pocket. He reached in with his gloved hand and pulled out a vial filled with blue liquid. It was the fake Kekkei Genkai that Hiriko made. Naruto looked at it carefully. If he drank from it, he would probably die soon. But if Dan's got it, even if it's just a small chance that he did, the results could be terrible. He was going to keep it until he could figure out what to do with it. As he went deeper into the districts, Naruto had the feeling that someone was after him, which was true. What was confusing, though, was who was after him. They hadn't moved or tried to attack, and he could tell they weren't trying to kill him. It looked like they were just there to watch and listen. He was scared because he knew something wasn't right. What game did Dan's play? What did he really want? When Naruto felt a lot of chakra coming at him, he quickly found himself surrounded by samurai who all had their katanas drawn and were ready to fight. Naruto didn't even blink. He just stared at the samurai, ready to open the Tanbogiri at any moment. He wasn't afraid of any kind of conflict at the moment, not even a dying breed. Naruto thought the leader was a samurai in a fur cloak. He said, Ryu Yokazi. By the orders of the current daimyo of the Land of Spring, Koyuki Kazuhana, you are to be brought to her as an honored guest within this land. He must have felt safer walking down the street with a target on his back when he was with the daimyo and her trained guards. Naruto then gave the group a nod and left with them to be taken to see the beautiful daimyo, whom he knew. He was curious about how she knew he was there. Konan, meanwhile, was walking around the big city and wondering where her blonde partner was. She was glad to be away from Hiriko because being around him made her feel uneasy, but she couldn't deny that she felt lonely when the blue-eyed man wasn't around. At least he told her who he really was and didn't try to hide the fact that he didn't trust her. The things he did with Root in the past were horrible, though, because Dan's was a monster dressed up as a person. A voice behind Konan said, well, I was told you were beautiful, but the rumors don't do you justice. Konan turned around and glared at the person in front of her. She knew of this man, but she had never met him in person. He was a member of Root and one of Dan's friends. The man was tall and handsome, but he had feminine features that made him look a little androgynous. He had blue eyes and pink hair that reached his shoulders. The Konoha flak jacket was on him, along with a short, sleeved green shirt and a pink sash around his waist. He wore black gloves with pink stains and a dull pink lapel over both of his legs. He also had a tattoo of flowers going up the whole length of his right arm, basic ninja sandals, and a Konoha Hittai 8 on his forehead. Naruto's Sharingan eyes appeared in Konan's amber orbs when she activated the power of Koinu that was sealed within her. The main difference was that Konan's red eyes were dull and almost glazed over. Oh, Naruto's Sharingan. I heard you got it in an unknown way. Those eyes are very valuable, from what I've heard. But don't act like you're the only one who has a piece of his power, Toge said as he cracked his neck and 4 black ropes with silver blades on the ends came out of his back. Now, try to give me a good workout. Then Konan ran up to Toge. She kicked him twice in the head, but he blocked both of them. He then tried to swipe at her with one of his 4 ropes, but she dodged it and fired some paper shuriken, which he blocked all of them by bringing the ropes together. She then did something bad by sweeping him off his feet and letting him land on his back. She then did something bad by kicking him in the head with an axe, but he rolled away just in time to avoid serious harm. Then she put chakra into her left eye, which made a shape of Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan appear. Ash began to gather around her. She clumped it together where she made a wing on her back. She wasn't able to shape the ash properly, so the wing was the only shape it could give her. Then she put chakra into her right eye and used Haten Fujin to shoot Toge with several spikes of gray ash. Toge did a back flip to avoid the spikes. Then she flew at him, ready to use her ash wing to cut him up. He used his rope to protect himself from her attacks, but it didn't work. They got into a violent fight with sparks flying everywhere. When she saw a weak spot in his defense, she kneed him in the chin, sending him flying backwards. He got back on his feet and grinned as he rubbed his chin. He then lunged 2 of his long chakra ropes at Konan, who jumped up and stared down at him. She landed on the ground a little ways away from the root agent and thought she knew what was going on and why he was here, so she sent more chakra to her eyes and waited for Toge to attack. That man did what he was told and mentally sent his strong chakra rope at Konan. She jumped in the air to avoid it, but he just sent the rope barreling upwards to attack her. She dodged it by spinning around in the air and then using the rope as a platform to jump off and land on the roof of a small building. With her plan in mind, she ran across the tiles, jumped off the roof, and aimed a punch at Toge, who flicked her away with another of his rope. After skidding to the ground, she quickly spun around and ran into him, where they did a bunch of taijutsu moves together. Between them, they kept blocking and dodging each other, but Konan's moves were getting slower and slower, which could mean she was running out of energy. She kept using her ash wing to her advantage, attacking Toge whenever there was a free space. But his chakra rope was getting annoying. She then jumped away and fired more ash spikes from her wing, which Toge blocked with his rope. He then spit out a big wave of water at her, but she blocked it with her wing, which made his technique useless. He then sent all 4 of his ropes flying at Konan with their blades ready to kill her. She quickly raised her defenses, though, and was able to avoid being skewered, but she was hurt in the arms and legs. She took advantage of this by running at Toge, who didn't have much of a defense. The man with pink hair smirked as he quickly pulled back his rope, which cut through Konan's muscles in her shoulders, legs, and sides, making her bleed everywhere, cough up blood, and fall to the ground. Well, that was harder than I thought. You're pretty persistent, aren't you? Toge asked as he looked down at Konan, who had lost. Konan had folded her arm into many sheets of paper and thrown them at Toge. Toge took a step back to avoid the paper, but it tore his flak jacket and shirt. Instead, Konan was shocked when she saw a young boy's face right on his chest. The boy's face looked a lot like Naruto's. Yes, this is the last Uzumaki. Naruto was once my subordinate with Root. I took his cells in power and made them mine. He's quite an interesting person, wouldn't you say? He then wrapped his chakra rope around Konan's body, making her unable to fight back. Danzo. Sama's plan is in effect. If Naruto truly loves you, no matter the danger, he will come for you. Naruto, on the other hand, was being led through the daimyo's royal palace by a group of heavily armed samurai who knew exactly who he was. Even though he was handcuffed, Naruto was glad that he wasn't being treated like a trophy or a common criminal. He looked at the warm sun shining through the ornate windows as he walked by many bright buildings and windows. Finally, he went through a door that led to a big room with a balcony and a small table where drinks and snacks were being served. It was then that he saw the daimyo proudly wearing her headdress and fanning herself. Daimyo Koyuki Kazahana said, "The restraints won't be necessary. I won't be in danger." In response, Naruto's samurai guardsman took off his cuffs, letting him move his wrists and enjoy the feeling of air on that part of his body again. "Please take a seat, Ryu Yokazi, unless that's your name right now. Would you like me to use your real name, Naruto Uzumaki, or my stage name, Yukie Fujikaze? Maybe we can call each other friends, acquaintances, or even lovers, but those things don't really matter." Naruto just listened and narrowed his eyes at the former actress. He didn't do anything that would have made the samurai act. He sat down in a small wooden chair next to the table with sweets. A cup of warm green tea was brought to him, and he drank it with some eagerness. Names are rather important things. They can sum up someone's identity with just a few choice words. Or the name itself can be a mere shadow of a person. But the fact that you use the power of blackness in your name is something to be admired. Fear is such a primal thing. When your false name is spoken, it resonates fear, while your real name resonates hope. "Just how is that so?" said Koyuki as she sat next to Naruto, who kept his red eyes on her. To keep things simple, Koyuki told Naruto, "I brought you here to talk. I will be honest with you. You, who used to be proud of being a shinobi in your village, now wants to destroy everything that village stands for. And yet, saying it that way feels so natural." Naruto kept his eyes on her, knowing that she was dangerous on her own. "It's good to see you gain, Koyuki. If only I could extend such a sentiment. But you look well, and the years have been kind to your appearance. So handsome. I would ask how and what you have been doing these past years, but I will get straight to the point." Naruto asked as he looked into the cup of tea and saw his reflection. "How did you know it was me? If I may ask. My spy network is strong, and as a daimyo I can pull the strings without question. I didn't find out your real name until you first came to my country. When one of my agents told me, the resemblance was too strong, too uncanny, but I still needed proof, and you gave it to me. You said you were Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto met her eyes. She was as smart as a fox. She had him confirm it with his own words. She knew he would have to be tired. "I wish to know how Danzo is related to my past. Who was I before? En route. What happened to Uzushiogakure? Those are just the tip of the mountain of questions I have. If you call yourself a spy master, you should know the answers." Naruto spoke to find out who he is. "Let me tell you a story. It's about a wonderful princess," Koyuki said, making Naruto raise an eyebrow at her. He didn't understand why she was avoiding answering his questions and playing this game. "I didn't come here to listen to." She, like most other ladies of court and royalty, was given everything she desired from her wishes and denied nothing that she couldn't get herself. However, she always kept a ray of humility and respect for those she ruled over. Because of this, she was much beloved by all, from the lowly farmers to even her friends, to the bakers and the weavers, their wives. Knowing her as much as she knew them. She was safe behind windows and monoliths of stone, seeing the world from her home in the sky, gazing down at the people below, hiding in her castle alone, hungry for histories and stories and to carve her place among them, to be them, memorize their faces, heedless of the gift that it is to be them. Despite having everything, she lived in solitude, alone. Nothing she saw became familiar to her. There was little reason to remember one's prison. Uttered Koyuki, beginning her story, making Naruto raised her eyebrows. Then one day, her eyes befell a wandering soldier. Once their eyes locked, love had bloomed between them. She would sneak out of the castle against the advice of her servants and family, but she didn't care. She had hoped, dreamed to escape from her prison in her own home. She, despite being a solitary and introvert person who had never opened up to anyone, found that this soldier could color her entire small world with just a single word. She allowed her heart to beat once more. All the while never telling the soldier of her identity. That soldier then discovered everything about her. Her fears had come to pass. She had no choice but leave him, but the loyal soldier, fueled by duty, stayed with her, understood her and cherished the princess even more. She was happy. She found someone that made her empty world full and whole. She soon fell pregnant with the heir to the kingdom and was gifted with a silver mirror adorned with gems from all around the world. Everything was perfect. To Naruto, this started to sound like some child. Like fairy tale, silly and untrue. But fate is a cruel thing indeed. A witch came and stole the heart of the soldier. The love he had for the princess became love for another. The witch thrived upon the love of the soldier who was at her beck and call, fulfilling her whims, and she in turn treated him with disdain and scorn, though the soldier couldn't see beyond his desires for the witch, who had grown gluttonous from the soldier's love. The princess understood her dilemma and resigned herself to her fate, or so one would think. In an effort to gain back the love of the soldier, she performed a miracle. She did the unthinkable. She sacrificed her unborn child to fuel a jutsu to kill the witch. Okay, now this story just grew more gloomy mood and emotion. This was a children's tale? And it was done. The witch had died a truly horrific death to which she suffered greatly. She then approached the soldier again and told him of everything she did. She even told him of their never-to-be-born child. While she believed he would accept her again, his features said otherwise. For his face was filled with horror, grief, fear and hatred towards the princess. The witch to whom she believed was a medic who healed the sick and treated the injured, the only one in the kingdom. The soldier was merely assisting her with the sick, and the disdain he was treated with was nothing more than playful banter between the two. The princess to whom the people loved was hated from then on. Children died and people suffered without the aid of the medic. Okay, this story had suddenly turned gloomy. The princess grew empty, she became cold, her emotions had died. People began to forget about her, not even recognizing her. She was what one would call a nobody. The first nobody. She lacked emotions and she lacked dreams. She had shattered her own life and now she had nothing to regret, as she was now incapable of regret. The only thing the princess kept was the mirror the soldier gifted her. She cared little for anything else and in the end, she had nothing to live for. People had forgotten her, she could no longer recognize herself. Told Koyuki while Naruto listened intently. So she climbed to the tallest tower of her castle, no clothes on her back, naked for all to see. The only thing to accompany her was the mirror. In that moment she jumped off the tower and onto the rocky cliffs below. The people who watched her didn't care, they didn't even know who she was. She survived the fall and she lay there, bloody and broken, for months on end, staring at the untouched mirror, not even chipped from the fall. Birds feasting on her body, their beaks carving into her flesh. In the end she stared into the mirror once more, and having nothing in her life, she decided to end it. She repeatedly smashed her face against the glass chanting, "Ugly, ugly, ugly," her blood flying everywhere and the glass cracking, the shards embedding themselves into her face. She died, chanting, "Ugly." The masses in history may have forgotten her, but some still know of her story. The first nobody. Spoke Koyuki as Naruto pondered the Sotri hadn't seen it before. That was really cruel. A woman who loved her partner so much that she crossed the line into evil and felt something worse than death. She was lonely and didn't have anything to live for. In the end, she didn't have anyone to help her. The world had left her, just like it had left him. I was similar to that princess. I too was a nobody, lacking emotions, not caring for anything. I can see you are the same. We can replicate emotions to their greatest extent where we can fool everyone around us. But Lyle the princess, our progenitor, we have nothing to live for, nothing to cherish. It's only when we have everything, do we lose it. Though you saved me. Naruto. Spoke Koyuki while Naruto listened, not saying with his head down. She rubbed her belly and thought about the life that was growing inside her. You gave me something to live for, and now I have everything again, she said. Naruto, just as you saved me, I don't want to see you fall into depravity and lose sight of everything in front of you. And I believe Konoha has the answers. You are a person who must decide his own place in the world. The thing you're trying to throw away, whatever that may be, is only half of what makes who you are. There's still time for you to choose. You walk a thin line between happiness and emptiness, but you should give it some thought. It could be good for you, to help those like yourself, and someday, my child as well. Will you return to Konoha? Naruto? Now that blonde was out on the streets, it was, to say the least, a strange meeting. Koyuki knew about his problems and did what she could to help him by giving him support and words of encouragement. It had been a life of abuse and hate, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to forgive. He didn't know if he would ever be ready. From his point of view, Konoha is one of the worst places in the world, no matter how it looks. What might he be able to find in Konoha that would make him feel better? Would they welcome him with open arms as a person and equal? Then he had doubts. But there was a feeling in the back of his mind that told him not to. He also got what Koyuki was saying. That love could make someone do terrible things, and it could keep us from seeing the truth. Covered in darkness, their eyes couldn't see the light. Love really is the most powerful thing in the world, because it can empty even the nicest soul. Outside of his thoughts, he saw a man screaming fly through the air and land right in front of him. 5 minutes before. After a few hours of travel, she had reached the land of spring. She had met many informants and information brokers, and they all told her the same thing: he was traveling northeast, maybe to the land of spring. If he wasn't, he was definitely on his way to the land of iron. If he had crossed the border into the samurai nation, she couldn't do anything about it without starting a global incident and being called a criminal for upsetting the land of iron's peace. A person who sells information had told her about a club where information often flows while she was walking down the street. That club might know the answer if Naruto were in the land of spring. As Sakura walked up to the big door, a big, strong man stopped her. He had his arms crossed and was staring down at her with a sneer. The big man with the grin said, "Get lost, little girl. You're not on the list. Go home and play with your toys." Sakura scowled at him, thinking that he was stupid for pushing her away after she had come so far. The man was kneed in the family jewels by the pink-haired Kunoichi, who didn't say anything back. He fell to the ground and held his hurt pride while she walked over him and pushed her way into the club. There was music and dancing, flashing lights, and colors that were chosen just for her as soon as she walked in. The club was big and fancy. There were black, white, and red decorations everywhere. There were even some traditional Japanese trees in the club, which made her eyes wander. With drinks in one hand and possible one night stands in the other, people were out on the dance floor doing exactly what it was made for. She had to find the owner because he knew what she needed to know. She wouldn't give up until she found him. She made her way through the loud music and many people to find the owner, a middle-aged man with 2 women in revealing dresses and the best drinks in their hands. She quickly realized that he was the person she was looking for. He was talking to his employees outside of a bar at the moment. Because he was surrounded by beautiful women every day, Sakura knew she would have to use the Kunoichi's art of seduction on him. A man like that was either a tough guy or a huge pervert. As she walked up to the bar, she stood to the owner's left. He noticed her right away and then pushed any other young women away from him. While the owner looked at the girl with interest in his eyes and nodded, the bartender said, "Sake, the strong stuff." The owner turned to face her and said, "You're a little young to be in this club, Pinky." Sakura smiled at him. As the man moved closer to her, Sakura told him, "Aren't you a bit flashy to have a name like Himitsu?" "Well, it's good to know that we only use first names." "But I don't think I got your name," said the owner, whose name was Himitsu. Himitsu smiled big and said, "Oh, you know, people like me have several." Sakura ran her hand down his chest, making it clear that he liked it. Sakura stomped on the man's body, making him squeak like a mouse, and said, "But you can just call me ma'am. You're the guy that knows everything about anything that's worth knowing. Tell me where I can find Ryu Yokazi and I'll leave." Sakura put a little more pressure on Himitsu's pride when he said, "Bitch." He said, "Ma'am, I don't know where he is. He could be outside this club right now. All I know is that he travels with a partner, a woman with blue hair. Even if you can't find him, she'll probably know where he is." As he finished speaking, several men brandishing swords, kunai, and other sharp weapons walked up to him with sneers on their faces and ready to attack at any moment. "This must be embarrassing for you. You might not do well in front of a big crowd. This is very awkward. Well, I'll just leave now. I have everything I need," Sakura said as she let go of the man's sacred stones and left him on his knees, clutching his hurt ego. As Himitsu waved his men's weapons ready, he told her, "Oh, bitch, you're not leaving this place alive. I'm a sensitive person, and you just hurt my feelings. Get her, boys." One of them ran up to Sakura's back and was about to cut her in half, but she turned around and punched the man in the jaw, sending him flying across the room and smashing into some glass. Everyone in the club ran out of the club scared for their lives. As the rest of the bad guys circled around, Sakura jumped into the air, focused her chakra into her heel, and then slammed it into the ground. The impact sent all the men flying backwards and landing on the ground with glass everywhere. As soon as one of the men got up, he saw Sakura fly through the air and hit him on the shoulder with her heel. He fell back to the ground and broke even more of the glass floor. The men, on the other hand, had no idea how strong the Konoha Kunoichi were. They will learn this the hard way. Sakura then gave someone an uppercut, which sent him flying into the air. She then roundhouse kicked 2 other people, and all 3 of them landed hard on the ground, hurting so badly it felt like they had been hit with a battering ram. After her first attack, Sakura kicked someone in the stomach and punched someone in the face at the same time. The 2 of them then hit some of their friends, knocking them down like dominoes. Then she tripped over someone else by sweeping her feet. She hit him in the gut, which sent him flying, and then hit him again, this time sending him back to the ground. Then she ran over him and kicked him in the face, throwing him into the bar and spilling drinks all over the place. Then she hit someone in the stomach so hard that he almost threw up his lunch. When another thug came at her, she kicked him in the leg, punched him in the stomach, and then gave him an uppercut that sent him flying through the roof. Another gang member then tried to attack her from behind, but she just elbowed him in the chest, which hurt him, and then kicked him away, where he probably broke a few bones. Someone else slashed at her with a katana, but she caught his arm and punched him in the back. She then elbowed him in the thigh and turned around to punch him again in the chest. He then took 2 kicks that sent him tumbling across the ground and into a wall. Then, she dove under a big knife slash and punched the man in the face. She then hit him hard in the chest, gave him an uppercut to the chin, and kicked him in the stomach, knocking him out and sending him flying into another thug. The club's DJ, who was wearing a big smiley face on his head, happened to fire several kunais. Seriously, where did he get them? But Sakura knew how to expertly avoid all the sharp weapons because she had trained with Tsunade. She jumped up over the DJ's equipment and kicked him in the head, knocking him out. She then elbowed him in the gut, slammed his face against his equipment, and threw him onto the dance floor, where she saw 2 girls around her own age. One of the girls asked, "Hidari, who is this bitch?" They were both wearing expensive, showy strapless dresses that didn't hide their bodies very well. Both of them wore feather scarves around their necks and had long black hair and pale blue eyes. One was dressed in purple and the other in green. That was the only difference between them. "I don't know Miggy, but we should fuck her up. She wants Ryu-kun, when she should know he's mine. Perhaps we should remind her on who he belongs to. So those are Naruto's contacts. That is. They understand where he is." Where her chakra went into her fists, Sakura thought. Then she pumped more chakra into the tips of her fists, which started to change into blue lotus flowers with petals that were moving around. Sakura Hisangeki, Cherry Blossom Mountain Crusher, was all Sakura could think as the 2 lotuses flew over her fists. This technique built on the jutsu she learned from Tsunade. It made her chakra enhanced strength even stronger by covering the tips of her fists with many layers of rotating chakra that hit with a lot of force. Someone with her level of chakra control would be the only one who could use that method. But the jutsu had one more thing going for it. They might be able to be fired like shots. The idea behind this technique comes from Naruto's Rasengan, but it changes shapes less much. Sakura then jumped and fired several Sakura Hisangeki at the twins, sending pieces of the ground flying apart with her special jutsu. The twins flipped back to avoid the shore. Fire death jutsu, though. When Sakura hit the ground, she fired more blue rotating lotus flowers at the 2 girls who were trying to box her in. The woman in the purple dress skidded around her and tried to kick her in the face, but Sakura dove under the kick. The woman in the green dress then tried to punch Sakura in the face, but she dove under the attack again and fired another lotus at the girl, which she dodged and hit the ground hard. The person in the purple dress appeared out of nowhere and kicked Sakura in the chest. Sakura was able to block the kick by raising her arms, but it sent her tumbling across the ground. The girl who kicked Sakura was then hit by another lotus flower. The girl barely dodged it, but it hit a large glass mirror that was being used for decoration and broke it. The 2 girls then nodded at each other and charged at Sakura. The girl in the green dress pulled out a kunai and spun around to try to slash Sakura, but she was able to block and dodge the attacks. Her sister, the girl in the purple dress, then did a double roundhouse kick on Sakura, which broke her defenses and made her movements easy to predict. She then tried to hit her with another lotus, but it missed because they were fighting so close together. The 2 girls then punched, kicked, and slashed at Sakura. Their blows hit her just right, knocking her off balance. But the Godem Hokage's disciple wouldn't give up easily. She got back on her feet and flew at the girls, where she hit one of them perfectly with her powerful Sakura Hisangeki. The purple girl ran away, leaving Sakura to fight the girl in the green dress. Sakura threw 2 jabs at the one girl, but she just barely blocked and dodged them. She also kept an eye on the blue lotus flowers over her fists to make sure they didn't hit her. Sakura then did a backhander, a roundhouse kick, and shot a lotus at the girl in the green outfit. The girl was able to dodge and block them expertly, but Sakura kept sending a flurry of rotating blue lotuses at her, leaving her open to a kick to the stomach. Sakura then punched the girl in the stomach several times with her chakra. Enhanced strength, followed by an uppercut and a double punch to the chest that sent the girl S. Sakura flipped over to the girl with the purple dress. The last twin sent 2 lotuses at the girl, but she dodged them and then kicked Sakura in the chest, making her skid away. When Sakura calmed down, she did a roundhouse kick that the girl dove under. They then both kicked each other at the same time, and both easily blocked the other person's kicks. The girl in purple then tried again with a kick to cut off Sakura's head, but the girl with pink hair dodged it. The girl then tried to kick Sakura several times in the torso, but Sakura blocked the attack with one arm. Then she sent a Sakura Hasangeki right into her chest, which made her cough up blood and become dazed. The girl desperately tried to kick the kunoichi away. Then they played a game called Fake Attacks, where both of them pretended to attack to see who would strike first. The girl in the purple dress then kicked Sakura twice, but she blocked both hits. The girl then kicked her again, and the kunoichi kept defending herself until she saw a way out. Then Sakura punched the girl in the stomach with an elbow, grabbed her arm, turned her around, and kicked her in the face, knocking her out. Sakura then fell to her knees. She was so tired from all the fighting that she could barely breathe. To keep her heart rate steady, she took sharp breaths. People didn't notice how strong she was, but she was working on it. She thought, though, that it wasn't really over. Then she turned around and saw the owner, Himitsu, standing there with a huge axe in his hand and a mean look on his face. The club owner said, "You're going to pay for this B***TCH. At the same time, Sakura stood tall and focused chakra into her fists, making blue lotuses appear. She was ready to fight. She did wonder how long she could keep going like this. Himitsu then pulled a few woven balls out of his pocket and threw them at Sakura. She jumped back to avoid them, but they exploded when they hit her. She then jumped to the right to avoid more, and so on as more and more explosive balls kept coming at her. She then threw her chakra lotus at the balls, and they exploded in the air, making a cloud of dust that made it impossible to see anything. Himitsu then flew through the cloud and tried to cut the girl with pink hair who had hurt his nuts and broken his club. He was able to hit her a few times with the blunt end of the axe, though, which knocked her back and made her feel dizzy. Then she pulled out a kunai, which blocked the axe just in time. She was then thrown back into rows of glass, where she got cuts and bruises all over her body. She stood up and smiled as her hair got longer and what looked like cherry blossom petals fell out of it. Then she charged at Himitsu, who threw more explosive balls at her. She dove and dodged them as they hit her. The club owner kept swinging his axe at her, hoping to hit her, but she was already too fast for him, so she kept hitting him with her fists up against his body. With one last blow, she split the axe in half and threw Himitsu into the air. But he was able to get back on his feet before a heavy presence hit him. Before he knew it, a blue flower was falling on his face, sending him tumbling through his club and out onto the street, where he landed right in front of a person in a black cloak. Now. Naruto looked down at the injured man, who was groaning in pain and had lost a few teeth. He then looked up at the destroyed club, where dust was rising and covering some of the street. His red eyes were searching for life when they saw a shadow of chakra jump out of the building and land a little away from him. He opened his eyes a little wider when he saw her, not expecting to ever see her again. Under these conditions, neither to meet is planned. Naruto asked, "Didn't I already kill you?" Sakura snapped her head up and saw someone in a cloak stand in front of her. She narrowed her eyes at the person, but couldn't see their face because of the cloak. She had a thought, but it was only a thought. Unless the person I killed was someone else, that would explain. But that doesn't seem likely. This isn't quite the reunion I had in mind. I was sure we would never see each other again, Naruto said as he slowly took off his hood. Sakura's eyes widened and her lip quivered at the sight she saw, which was like a beautiful painting. He was there. Naruto then shook his head from side to side, letting his long hair fall loose. His low ponytail swayed in the wind. "Sakura-chan," she said, "Naruto." with tears running down her face. She didn't whimper or sob. She just let the tears fall like rain. You're really alive. And so are you. It's funny how fate gives people second chances. I thought you were dead too, Naruto said sharply, making Sakura gasp. There was something off about the way he spoke, it was empty and cold. Like a breath of winter in the morning. Something very. He seemed like a different person because of what was wrong with him. So, try to help me understand this. You attempted to track someone all the way across the continent, someone who barely a week ago tried to kill you. I'm not seeing the logicality in all this. And for what? Satisfaction? I wonder if Kona has sent you? Or do they not know you're here? Sakura tried to find the right words to say. We all thought. I just needed to know. If you were real. If this was some cruel dream or a forgiving nightmare. But, it really is you. And yet it isn't you either. Even though she was happy and scared of the person in front of her, her heart was beating like a hammer hitting metal. What kind of person did he turn into? Where is the happy? Go. Lucky idiot she fell in love with? I came, Naruto. I never really got the chance to say this before, and my feelings haven't changed at all, Sakura said. The blonde kept his eyes on her and stepped over the groaning man's body, getting a few steps closer to the pink-haired girl while still keeping 2 arms length between them. Naruto. I love you. I have from that moment you made me that promise. Do you now? Naruto asked, not bothered by what she said or scared in any way. Sakura kept looking at the ground because she was a little scared to look him in the eye. I do, and all the times we spent together. I remember when we first became Team 7, when you offered to have lunch with me. During a teamwork exercise when I fed you. When you congratulated me and cheered me up for successfully climbing that tree in the land of waves. How I almost backed out of the Chunin exams because I didn't want to see your dream crushed, or how you gave me confidence to continue on. How you cheered for me during my fight with Ino. How you protected me from Gaara and saved the village when we were invaded, again. Or how you brought Tsunade back to the village and turning me into a real kunoichi. How you had always been there for me, making promises which you would keep. Treating me like a person, someone that mattered. Only you understood how I felt. And through that, I fell in love you. Spoke of Sakura, but Naruto remained mute and unsure if she was right. Naruto, do you know there's this theory going around? It's called, the multiverse. Well, apparently, all of time, space, matter and energy is all happening at once in different timelines in different universes. It's the idea of a parallel universe. Right? So okay, let's presume the multiverse is real. Maybe there is a universe where you try to act like a gentleman and give me your cloak even though you're feeling cold too. Even though you end up sick and you still try to convince me you're fine and that it's not my fault, and act tough. Instead I laugh, shake my head and give you a small smile, and say, you are an idiot. Maybe there's a universe where we fall asleep next to each other every night like spoons. Like 2 innocent bunnies. My face buried in your neck, hugging your warmth. And we both don't want anything or anybody else. Where we don't want more, we just want each other. Maybe there's a universe where you hold my hand while I give birth to our child in a white hospital room with pink flowers and fuzzy teddy bears on the windowsill. Where we take family vacations and pose for dorky pictures. Where we curl up to watch a cheesy movie at the end of a long day in our big house once the kids have fallen asleep. Naruto kept narrowing his eyes at her. After hearing her talk for a while. What exactly did she want to say? Maybe there's a universe where that's the life I want. Where I don't second guess everything and I'm not afraid of commitment and of the future and of love. Maybe there's a universe without all the noise in my and the pride that makes me so fiercely independent and the coldness in my heart that I can turn on and off like a light bulb. Maybe there's a universe where I'm the right person for you, where I adore every nice thing you did for me without starting to resent you. A universe where we're happy. Without wondering if that happiness is some wrong messed up Jenga game ready to topple at the slightest quiver. I want that universe so badly, I want to make things right. Naruto, I want to be with you and no one but you. I love you so much it hurts. And I want this universe to be the right universe. Naruto said in a soft voice, well. When you put it that way. His face was blank. According to Naruto, Sakura widened her eyes and shook when he said, you just found me in the wrong universe. Because you could have loved me forever. And maybe in another universe, I would have let you. But in this universe, I don't even have a shred of love for you. If you loved me, you would have saved me that day. If you loved me, you wouldn't have hated being around me and treated me like a sick animal. If you loved me, maybe you loved me, I wouldn't be what I am. A nobody. There is no life for me with you, only a reminder of what happened to me. There is nothing real between us, there never has been and never will be. Naruto broke Sakura's heart, making her cry more, but she didn't giggle or sob. He said, I met Koyuki. She talked. A lot. I think it was the first time she told that kind of story. She told me to go back to Konoha. Sakura did nothing but listen to him because it was his turn to talk. And? I don't know if by rejoining Konoha I will get what I want. Or if I can't. Though I'm unsure of everything. The way she said it made me question what I'm doing. I've been feeling things I haven't felt in a long time. I don't even know what I want anymore. Naruto spoke, showing his deepest thoughts. So what exactly do you want? Any fair guesses? I don't know. For the past few months now, I've been working towards a single goal, to correct this wrong world and change it for the better. This world created a thing like me. And I don't want that fate for anybody else. What I'm doing is for peace, a true lasting peace where nobody has to hate each other and the dreams in their hearts come true. Naruto said as he looked up into the sky, dreaming the possibilities. I want to start things over, a new life, a new world. All I want is the things I never had. Yes, yes. That's what I want. I've sacrificed too much for this world. That's why I shall pull out its roots. But, that isn't your choice to make, to decide whose dreams come true or not. Why are you going to pull out its roots? Is it because of Konoha, the ninja villages, the 5 nations, shinobi, samurai, all of them? Me? To throw yourself into the chaos for peace? To wage war and destroy lives? All for the sake of peace? People aren't your tools to be used and discarded when you have no use for them. It isn't your place to toy with them like a god and decide things for them when they can choose for themselves. There is no reason for this. If you wish to bring this idea of yours to fruition, then it can only be done with open arms and with help from others. You pretend to care about this world and its people, you intend to make it better for all of us. But in the end, you hate solitude, you hate being alone. That's your greatest weakness and act of selfishness. You do these things so you won't be alone. What you want is nothing more than to wake up with smiling faces all around you. To prove that you are a person, not some empty thing. Said Sakura, making Naruto widen her eyes at her, as somehow, no matter how he would deny it, she was right. He was a self-centered person who didn't want to be alone, so he proved he was important. What you say is both true and false. You may be right about me, but I know the hearts of men and they hold shadows darker than any tainted creature. There are things hidden in the shadows of this world, Sakura, which you couldn't begin to guess. Because I laugh at a world full of stupid humans, who ignore these shadows and abandon their vigilance to pursue selfish goals. What I pursue may be selfish, but I have not abandoned my vigilance, nor will I fail like the shadows that came before me. I know the hearts of men even before the shadows came to me. It is why they came to me. The people of the world do not want the truth, they wish to live in lies they tell themselves. And I am but a shadow, lingering in the sun. Said Naruto with hidden meaning in his words, nearly as if he knew more than anyone else. In this world had. Takara asked Naruto, you think you know me better than I know myself? Naruto gave her a strange look. I do, you're just a little girl, seeking a fairy tale fantasy. Living blissfully in a world full of hypocrisies, there can be no peace when the world is consumed by rage. You're misguided, living off this world of lies. Well, that will change, when the time is right. Naruto said this as he walked away. Having had enough of today. He dodged Sakura's punch, but she ran after him and tried to hit him in the face. Sakura said as she tried to punch him again, you would just throw away your friends and family so easily to follow this godly idea of yours. He easily dodged the punch. Naruto was clearly shocked by Sakura's last words, which she said while wailing angrily at him. You want to throw away everything you've ever known in order to get something that only you could want. Getting scars all over yourself. Acting like some cheesy tragic hero is an insult to the Naruto that died at the Valley of the End. This world isn't full of lies. You're lying to yourself. Trash like you. Trash like you should stay out of Konoha. Sakura yelled as she tried to throw one more punch but missed. She then fell to her knees. She asked Naruto Uzumaki, "Why do you hurt yourself for this? Why do you keep stabbing yourself with these dreams?" And then she got up and left, never wanting to see him again. She would go back to Konoha and be sad for the rest of her life. While she was running away, Naruto just stood there and looked at her. She would understand his point of view in due time. He turned heel, pulled up his hood, and left without stopping to think about what she said. Dan stopped Sakura in the middle of the road while she was walking away and just stared at her. Danzo told Sakura, "You will not remember any of this. Rest and forget." At that moment, a root agent showed up, knocked her out, and took her away from the land of spring. Naruto was walking along the road when he noticed strong chakra sources all around him. He stopped in his tracks and pulled the Tanbogiri out of his sleeve. Its black color can consume light itself. Naruto looked over the rooftops to try to find the root members who were following him around. With his senses, he knew they were there and was able to find them quickly. They tried to kill him before, but this time they didn't do anything. Dan's was becoming very brave. The blonde knew that the elder Konoha had the upper hand in some way, but the Sharingan wielder didn't know what. Later, Naruto quickly turned his attention to the direction in front of him when he felt a very strong chakra signature up ahead on the road. Naruto looked at the chakra with dangerously narrowed eyes. He didn't know who it was because they were walking up to him without a care in the world. The way the chakra felt told Naruto that this was Obito Uchiha. He was dressed in what looked like the war clothes that the Uchiha clan used to wear. He was wearing a unique mask and had a big gunbai on his back that Naruto knew belonged to Madara. Naruto then grabbed his cloak and threw it off, showing his black armor and coat. His blue rope belt was dancing in the wind. Obito smirked under his mask and took out the gunbai. He looked it over to make sure the wooden frame wasn't broken. Obito swung his gunbai and said, "It's been too long, Naruto. You don't write anymore, it's really unsettling." The wind sent a big gust towards Naruto, but all it did was make his cloak, belt, and hair move back and forth like they were dancing to a tune. I know, we promised to settle this later, but who has time for that? I'd rather just kill you now, Obito said as he rushed towards Naruto. The blonde pulled out a kunai and threw it at one of the last few Uchiha, surprising Naruto. The blonde then thought back to what Conan had said about Obito being able to move through things as if he weren't even real. Then Naruto charged at the Uchiha, who pulled out his gunbai and was about to cut Naruto's head in half. Just as Naruto raised the Tanbogiri to block the attack, the weapon and Obito passed right through it. When Obito became solid again, he tried to hit Naruto in the back with the gunbai, but the blonde dodged the blow, sending sparks and splinters flying everywhere and sending both of them skidding away from each other. The root agents hiding on the rooftops then set off explosive tags on the blonde. She was able to avoid all of them, but it was hard because Obito was immune to the blasts and was chasing the blonde like he was a carrot on a stick. Following this, more soldiers came down from the rooftops to join the battle below. Obito was working out Naruto very hard, so he added more work for him to do. Then Madara's student got it. From the beginning, this was planned. Several more soldiers joined the fight. Naruto wouldn't be worried if it were just the soldiers, but since he was still fighting Obito, the blonde's attention would be split, which would make things harder. At the last second, Naruto braced himself as Obito hit him with his gunbai. The younger Sharingan user rolled across the ground and stopped when he put his clawed hand on the ground. The root forces then came down and opened fire on Naruto. He had to defend himself. After that, he sealed his hands for a wind jutsu. Futon. Tenrin, Orchid Sky. Naruto yelled as he held out his hand. Immediately, a tornado. Like wind blew out of nowhere, knocking every root agent off their feet except Obito, who stayed calm and steady. The force was so strong that it created a dust cloud nearby that Naruto used to get away and plan his next move. Naruto was running through the streets, with Root still on his tail. He currently wondered as to where Danzo and Obito were, but he had bigger things to worry about as he was searching for his partner, the blue-haired angel known as Conan. He then crossed into a street where Lord Behold Danzo was ready for him. Naruto yelled, "Danzo!" because he didn't like how the man looked. "Naruto Uzumaki, it's good to see you again. It's too bad we have to fight as enemies when we could have been better friends," Danzo said in that calm but dangerous voice of his. As a true Konoha extremist, Danzo wouldn't just show up in front of Naruto without having something planned. When he spoke, Naruto just stooped down and got ready to fight the Konoha elder. "Now Naruto, don't be too hasty. You wouldn't want anything bad to happen to this one, would you?" he asked as he dropped a scroll with a seal on it on the ground. Soon, smoke came out of the seal and a shape appeared. On top of the scroll was the crushed and restrained body of Konan. Her arms and legs were tied together, and her mouth was taped shut. But he could tell something was wrong. She didn't look like she was in danger or calling out to him. It looked like she was calm, but he had no idea what that meant. Then Danzo pulled out a katana and held it close to Konan's neck, which almost made Naruto act. Danzo said, "Don't worry, I won't hurt her as long as she's still useful to us." This made Naruto look at him with wide eyes. Did they come to get Koinu? To look at? If they ever got their hands on his original eyes, terrible things would happen. Then Danzo threw another scroll to the ground. He grabbed Konan by the neck and threw her over his shoulder. "If you survive, come and find me. Until then, enjoy the gift from your clan." The scroll then gave off smoke that covered the whole area, forcing Naruto to cover his eyes. He then let out a gasp of shock at what Danzo had unleashed, something easily the size of a building that was covered in gold and bronze and had 4 arms and 2 heads holding a big axe and a spear. Naruto was shocked. He had never seen anything like that before. A koken, or guardian, was one of the old buildings that kept Uzushio safe. When Uzushio was erased from the map, he thought they were all gone. Before he could marvel at it some more, the guardian raised its huge axe and tried to hit the blonde where he stood. Naruto didn't know how to fight a giant like that. Despite its size, it moved very quickly, like Naruto was a tiny bug flying around and jumping from place to place. The man in black then blocked an attack with his axe, but then he saw the spear coming at him. Naruto pulled out the Tanbogiri and just barely blocked the spear, but he was then thrown into a building. The blonde then used lightning jutsu, but it didn't really hurt the S-rank swordsman. It just brushed off any attacks he threw. This thing had tough armor and strong weapons. The last Uzumaki couldn't believe that a shinobi could beat it. His clan really did make weapons that were so powerful that many people thought they should be wiped out. The giant then used its spear to try to hit the blonde, but Naruto blocked it with the Tanbogiri. The person using the Sharingan had to use all of his physical strength to block the spear, which almost made him fall to his other knee. He was only able to push away at the last second. Naruto saw no other way to defeat the thing, and Danzo was the only way he knew how to get around it. Naruto took a vial of blue liquid and gulped it down quickly, eager to take in Hiriko's fake Kekkei Genkai and make it his own. The blonde dropped the Tanbogiri to the ground and did a few hand seals just as the giant swung its axe at Naruto. The axe was about to cut him in half. Everyone in the area heard a loud, crashing sound as the blonde closed his eyes for the last time. He opened his eyes and saw the Koken's axe embedded in a glass. The things Naruto saw and was surrounded by made him think of glass. When the giant pulled out its axe, pieces fell softly and cut Naruto on the cheek. When Naruto put his hands together again and kneaded the fire and earth chakra together, he thought, "I see. Mixing them together can make both lava and glass release." He remembered that Hiriko had told him about some side effects. He knew that he had to get Konan back quickly to make sure she was safe. Garasutan. Banshee Heian, glass release, certain death shards. Naruto explained, making up the name on the spot. He then hovered his hands over the ground and several glass projectiles that looked like daggers appeared. He threw them at the Koken, where their speed and force stunned the giant. Then, the Koken got strong and swung its spear at Naruto. Naruto dove out of the way and sent more glass shards at the giant, knocking it over. The blonde Uzumaki then did more hand seals to get a glass release jutsu. Garasutan. Shingai Suru Geijutsu Wana, glass release, encroaching art trap. Here, the blonde rolled a ball of glass and hit it against the giant's chest. The glass then spread out from its body, trapping it and making it impossible for it to move. As soon as the last piece of glass broke, Naruto quickly and accurately cut off the giant's arms. Naruto looked back at his work and noticed how badly damaged the Colossus was. He then looked down at his left hand and gave it a few test squeezes. He didn't feel any problems, but that didn't mean they wouldn't show up. Naruto focused hard and found Danzo's chakra signature, which pointed east. He then sped after the leader of Root, determined to save Konan. But he didn't notice that the behemoth's head was moving or that it was detaching and making spider-like legs that started to follow him. Naruto thought the Koken wasn't fully defeated yet because he landed on a roof just as he was closing the gap between him and Danzo. Naruto was hit by several golden spears and shuriken, but he blocked them with the Tanbogiri. When he looked up, he saw the Koken's mechanical head staring down at him. The mechanical head then fired more golden shuriken at Naruto from its head, which Naruto dodged. Its persistence was getting on Naruto's nerves, so he quickly came up with a way to kill it. He threw his sword right at its head, piercing it in the forehead, and then he flew at it and cut it in half. In this way, it ends. They kept running after Danzo because he didn't want him to get away. Danzo was walking to the meeting place with Conan's moving body on his shoulder. The next part of his plan would start there if he didn't get confirmation that Naruto Uzumaki was really dead and defeated. He could feel the woman in his arms fighting hard against him, but that didn't bother him. All he had to do was get Naruto on either train. After that, he saw his agents loading trains and the tracks that led into huge mountain ranges. The train system in the Land of Spring was famous, and other countries have tried to copy it. It makes it possible to travel across a country. Following this, Danzo walked up to one of the trains and led his hostage to the front of the train. Following his order, the loud wheels of the trains began to turn, and they slowly began to move forward along the tracks. Naruto had just come around the corner, running so fast that lightning caught on his feet. He saw that 2 trains were leaving their stops and hurried to get to at least one of them. Then he slammed his hand hard on the ground. His armored claws dug into the concrete, sending sparks flying. He then made a sharp turn and was now running next to the trains. Naruto jumped onto the side of a building and ran along its length before jumping off with all his strength. He flew through the air and braced himself as he crashed through a train window, sending glass flying everywhere as he hit the hard metal wall of the train. It was a very small window, and the blonde could have killed herself if he had made one mistake. He had to hold back hoarse coughs as he got up and dusted himself off. He put his hand over his mouth. He was shocked to find his own blood all over his hand when he pulled the limb away. Not so badly hurt by the window crash that he would cough up blood, right? That wasn't it. Those were the effects of the fake Kekkei Genkai. With his fist clenched in anger, he knew he had to get to Conan quickly before his body went crazy. He was weaker and heavier, and he could feel it. He thought that long-term exposure and active use of the glass release sped up the bad effects. As he looked around, he noticed that everything was made of dark metal. He knew that this train was meant to carry supplies and soldiers across the country, since it had so few windows and wasn't open to the public. Then he heard metal clinking coming from a different train car. Then he looked up and saw a hatch that led to the train's roof. He jumped through it to get away from Root's eyes. Naruto was walking on top of the train without making a sound while the agents searched the carriage for the thief. Naruto was about to jump to another carriage when he saw a swirling distortion behind him. The blonde man turned his head and saw Obito ready with his gunbai. "Mind if I drop in?" Obito asked rhetorically as he threw Naruto a big gust of wind that knocked him off his feet and onto an empty platform on the moving train. The younger person who was using the Sharingan then got up and prepared the Tanbogiri for battle. There was always something in his way, no matter where he went. Then they rushed at each other and hit each other with a clash of metal and wood. But Obito's intangibility was becoming a problem for the blonde because every time he tried to hit Obito, the man who killed his parents would just fade away like he was a ghost. Naruto fired a few shuriken at Tobi, but he blocked them with his gunbai. But Obito didn't notice until it was too late that the shuriken had strong cables attached to it that were also attached to his opponent's hand. Then Naruto pulled so hard on the strings that the gunbai flew out of Obito's hand and into Naruto's. The blonde thought that Obito couldn't phase through things that were attached to his body because the gunbai had a chain attached to it. Naruto then slammed the gun over Obito's shoulder, making a loud cracking sound. He then kicked the Uchiha away. "Not bad, not half bad," Obito said as he stood up after getting hit and rolled his shoulder and cracked his neck. Naruto was getting ready for his next attack. Obito asked, "Are you ready for this?" He then waved his big war fan around and sent a tornado flying towards Naruto. Naruto prepared his Tanbogiri and cut it in half, but then he saw Obito fly through his hand seals and spit out a horse-sized fireball through his mask, where the tornado's remains came together and were set on fire in a huge explosion. Naruto, on the other hand, jumped out of the flames, his coat a little burned but otherwise unharmed. They quickly clashed their weapons again. The blonde saw a hole in Obito's defense and held his black blade in a reverse grip. The chain on the pommel was whipping back and forth because of the speeding train. Hit the older man in the chest with a palm strike, then used the Tonbogiri to cut him down and hit him with a jab right after. Obito took a kick to the temple, but the mask absorbed the blow. Naruto then took 2 cuts across the chest, an elbow to the left pectoral, a cut to the left leg, and a strike across the side while he was on his back. Even though Obito was very fast, he just barely avoided the blonde's sword strikes. The blonde's strikes tore his clothes and hurt him a little. After getting a kunai, Obito attacked Naruto with it, cutting him across the shoulder and twice across the chest. He also hit him with his gunbai, sending him flying across the ground. A gust of wind then blew him even farther away, and he crashed into the hard metal wall of another carriage. Obito then threw his gunbai at Naruto, sending it hurtling at him and hitting him in the chest. He then put several explosive tags on his kunai and threw it at Naruto. Naruto pulled on his hand, which showed that he had wrapped shinobi wire around Obito while he was attacking him. Naruto used the metal to channel his lightning chakra through the capable just as the tags went off in front of him. The explosion blew Naruto away, while Obito was shaking and grunting because lightning was running through his body. It went off with such force that Naruto could almost feel his rubs breaking from the impact. But he found Obito on one knee, with lightning still going through him and his body going numb from the electricity. In a flash of speed, Naruto grabbed Obito by the back of the head and slammed his masked head into the metal floor of the platform where they were fighting. Before Naruto could stab Obito in the head with the Tonbogiri, the older Sharingan user kicked Naruto away. The blonde then tried to cut him again, but Obito blocked the attack and slammed his gunbai into Naruto's spine, making the blonde scream in pain even though he was used to it. Obito then grabbed Naruto by the neck and threw him through the metal doors of a different carriage, where the blonde fell over and piled up. He thought Obito wasn't going to fight hard, but he did. It was like when he fought Muku at the blood prison. Though Uchiha was older and had been fighting longer than Naruto, he knew a lot about the Sharingan. To win this fight and save Konan, Naruto would have to use his smarts. He was deep in thought, though, until he coughed up a lot of blood that wasn't from Obito's attack and onto the ground. This student of Madara woke up to find a lot of root agents standing in front of him, getting their kunai ready to attack. Naruto saw a window on his right and quickly jumped through it to get out of the way of the kunai rain. But even more kunai went through the train's metal armor while he was hanging on its side, forcing him to move all the time to avoid getting hurt. He then climbed to the roof of the train, where his footsteps could be heard through the resounding metal. Naruto had to run back across the carriage to avoid the fire of the next kunai that came after him. They slashed through the train's roof. The blonde then jumped off the carriage and landed on an empty platform, the same one where he had been fighting Obito before. Obito was still there. While lying on the ground, Naruto saw a root agent trying to separate a train car from the rest of the fleet. Naruto used Kamiyo-no-Nyo, Sutepu no Shinigami, Steps of the Death God, to slow down time around him. He did this by directing chakra into his left eye, which is where his eternal Managekyo Sharingan pattern showed up. His form was covered in black smoke and shadow. Naruto rushed past Obito, who was frozen in time, and threw a kunai at the root agent. The agent died right away, just as the jutsu ran out and the cable between the 2 cars broke. The blonde jumped off with all his strength, making the carriages behind Naruto shake and clatter violently. He was still running on the empty platform as he did this, and his feet scraped against the ground as he tried to hold on. When 2 carriages came loose, they went off the tracks and into the water, where they were sure to die. Naruto had to hold on even though his grip was getting weaker from the stress. The train was rocking back and forth, and the carriage Naruto was holding on to had slackened off the tracks, so it wasn't rolling on the tracks but instead was freely grinding against the metal road, sending sparks flying everywhere. Naruto then turned his body around and grabbed a pole. He stood on the side of the car and used his chakra to hold on to it. The wind was so strong that he had to squint his eyes. He ran along the length of the almost dead carriage, but he had to hurry because he was getting close to a tunnel. He climbed to the roof and kept running before jumping, but the loose platform hit the tunnel and blew the carriage off its hinges. The train now had only 2 stable cars left. Naruto walked forward to stop it, but Obito, who had suddenly appeared behind him and used his gunbai, knocked him off his feet. Obito told Naruto, who was on the ground, "You didn't think it would be that easy." Naruto then swung the Tonbogiri at Obito, but the Uchiha blocked the blade, which went deep into the wood. Both of them blocked the other's blows as they locked weapons and pushed against each other, each trying to get the upper hand. I see, you don't care about any of this, Root, me, or Konoha. You just want the one person who gives you purpose. She's your ecstasy, and you need her. Without her, you'll always be a nobody, empty and alone. Naruto clenched his teeth at what he said, but he couldn't say anything else because a huge light hit him. The 4 lights that showed the way through the mountain they were traveling in got closer and closer until they would hit the blonde right off the train. The blonde wasn't ready to get off the train yet. By placing his foot on Obito's gunbai, Naruto kicked him away and used the force to jump off the train, flip it over, and land through a window into a carriage. Obito smiled under his mask before making a hand seal. Once Naruto got a better look at what was going on, he saw that the carriage was completely covered in explosive tags, from head to toe. Obito had just set off the explosive tags, and Naruto was running toward the door. He braced himself and burst through the metal just as the tags went off, singing his hair and giving him a nasty burn on his face. His body was also slightly burned all over. Naruto got off the last carriage and landed on the roof in an attempt to surprise Obito from above. But he felt something grab his leg and pull him down into the car, where he hit the ground hard and found Obito's gunbai pressing against his neck. Naruto glared at Obito with his red eyes and said, "I killed the driver. Now you're going to crash and die." Obito was then kicked away, making the masked Uchiha skid across the ground. Obito just dodged the Tanbogiri with his gunbai when Naruto threw it at him. Then Obito rushed at Naruto and kicked him in the stomach. He then disappeared into a swirling distortion and reappeared above Naruto, punching him on the head. He then made sharp branches from his arm and pierced the blonde's chest, called up a large shuriken from his pocket dimension and slashed her twice across the chest, disappeared again, and reappeared from above firing multiple large vajra at her, but she dodged them all. And threw shuriken at Obito, but Obito just vanished, then came back from behind the blonde, and swung his gunbai at his spine, hitting the younger man hard. When Obito outpaced Naruto, he clenched his teeth and said, "I'll pay for the small scratches I got." He then put chakra into both of his eyes, making them bleed. He held out both hands, and black flames that looked like swords appeared in his left hand. In his right hand, ash clumped together and looked like a blade. There were 2 weapons in the blonde's hands, Haten, Fujin, ash release, Fujin, and Enten, Kagutsuchi, blaze release, Kagutsuchi. He attacked Obito with his ash sword and just barely cut him with it. Then he kicked him in the mask and slashed him across the stomach with the ash blade, across the shoulder with the black flame sword, and diagonally across the chest with the Kagutsuchi. He then slashed him again across the chest with both the ash blade and the flame sword at the same time while spinning around in the air and slashing him twice downward and then launching both swords as he flew away. He caught fire there and was bleeding heavily all over his body. Naruto saw Obito completely disappear before his eyes. It wasn't like he fell through a distortion or used a teleportation jutsu. It was like he was never there at all, like he was a genjutsu. Naruto quickly checked his chakra and saw that he wasn't under any genjutsu. This made him think that. That's what Obito did. Obito came back completely healed with no wounds on his body. That's when Naruto slammed his masked head hard against the metal wall of the train. The Uzumaki had cuts, bruises, and burns all over his body, but they were only on the surface and wouldn't get in the way of his fighting. It was Naruto who said, "I will be the one who lives forever." Obito smiled behind his mask, and Naruto's strong fingers broke through the mask. It was Obito who said, "Not today, I think." He then took out a tag with a seal on it and slammed it on Naruto's left arm, making the Uzumaki cry out in pain and let go of Obito. Soon, a student of Madara fell to his knees as black marks that looked like seals moved along Naruto's arm, on his skin, under his armor, and over the left side of his face.
Danzo gave me that. Half of your power has been reduced greatly and it will continue to seal the other half as well.
Soon you won't be any more dangerous than a rabbit. It's an activation seal, used when the original caster of the seal is unavailable. It does exactly as it's meant to, activate the seal on your left arm. Well, at least one of the seals. So long. Obito said where he disappeared in a swirling vortex as soon as the train reached the end of the line. Naruto jumped out of one of the windows and onto the ground, where he was burned by the seal. The train then crashed into a station. As the carriage continued to fall through the narrow tunnel, it was immediately engulfed in fire and black flames. While Naruto was picking himself up, The Tanbogiri landed next to him, and he picked it up. With his teeth clenched in pain, Naruto stood up straight. He could hear the sound of a train and feel Danzo's chakra signature coming up quickly. Despite the pain, Naruto ran ahead and saw the train coming toward him. He could also feel Konan's chakra. Naruto jumped onto the last carriage just as the train was passing by, but a root agent saw the frayed end of his coat and used a short-range transmitter to let Danzo know about the sneak. He said, "I think he's on," but he couldn't say anything else because someone stuck a black blade in his throat and kicked him off the train. Then Naruto ran quickly to the top of the train. From there, he could see Danzo clearly because the tunnel was big enough for him to stand and fight. But those plans fell through when several root agents got out of the carriage and looked at Naruto, who laughed at them all. Next, he got the Tanbogiri ready and attacked. One of the agents tried to punch him, but Naruto was still a tough opponent. He blocked the punch, swept his foot, and kicked the soldier in the chest, sending him flying into his friends. The blonde then turned into a black blur as he sped past the root agents, who were bleeding or being pushed and kicked off the train and were dying. He even hit someone behind the back and sent them flying. After that, he did hand seals and got his new Kekkei Genkai ready for a jutsu. Garasutan. Ketsugo Mado Ryoiki, Binding Window Field. Naruto yelled as he slammed his hands on the ground, causing glass to fly up and cover the whole carriage, caught people's feet in it. Naruto then took off many of his wrist seals and threw them quickly and skillfully at the root agents, so fast that they couldn't see them. They died instantly and their blood stained the glass. Some people just jumped over them, but Naruto had no trouble with them. Then he used wind jutsu to knock them all off their feet. They fell next to the train in a mess of bloody, twisted bones and limbs. "Unleash the Dore, slaves," upon him, yelled a root agent, as others nodded and opened scrolls in the blonde's wake. Naruto narrowed his eyes in shock as he saw smoke come out of nowhere, revealing the golden bodies of large men made of metal. They had clothes around their waists and sad looks on their faces as they stumbled their way towards the person wielding the Sharingan. They also looked out for Uzushio on their own, but they weren't as strong as the Koken. When Naruto saw them coming, he sent fire chakra into the Tanbogiri. It caught fire and looked like someone had poured oil on it. His mind began to work on how Danzo got his hands on the old weapons of the Uzumaki clan. Then he threw the Tanbogiri with the flames on it at a statue of a slave. The statue fell to its knees and off the train. Another one walked up to Naruto and spat several fireballs at it. Then he kicked the statue so hard that it flew off the side of the train. Now there were only two left, and Naruto used Garasutan, Banshee Heian to make several glass shards that looked like daggers. He then fired them at the slave statues, and they easily punctured and killed them. Naruto knew he couldn't get through the train's roofs, so he found a hatch that led to the carriages below. He jumped down and looked around the area. He didn't feel any root agents nearby. He sped forward on the train until he felt a strong presence just ahead of him. It was facing him directly and giving him a small growl. He was a huge man who was easily taller than Naruto. The black leather jacket he wore somehow fit his big body. He also wore black pants, big black boots, leather gloves, and a mask with white markings on it to hide his face. The person in question was known to Naruto as Hametsu, a missing ninja who was known for being violent and was one of the killers after his head. "Finally I get to kill a legendary Uzumaki," Hametsu said as he clenched his fists. Naruto glared at him, making the black marks on his body spread even more. Then, they fought a taijutsu battle that lasted a few minutes. Naruto had to do everything he could to protect himself from the heavy attacks. Hametsu was fast, but his size slowed him down a bit.
Then he punched Naruto right in the chest, which made him fall backwards and land on his knees, where he coughed up blood from his body breaking down.
Naruto was about to be hit in the head by Hametsu's foot, but the blonde Uzumaki blocked the attack with her hands. "Danku, splitting void," Naruto said as a clear barrier the shape of a rectangle appeared in front of him to protect him from Hametsu's strong kick. He then jumped over the barrier and punched Hametsu twice in the stomach before giving him a roundhouse kick in the face. The giant then tried an axe kick on the blonde, but she dove to the side and gave him another roundhouse kick, sending the Uzumaki flying through the air like he was on a cloud. When the man in the mask swung his fist at Naruto, it knocked his head off his shoulder. The blonde dove under him and hit him twice in the head. which knocked Hametsu off his feet. The huge man got back up and got even angrier at the fast blonde. Naruto, on the other hand, could feel the effects of the seal spreading through his body, taking away more and more of its power. Naruto had a new space time ninjutsu that he had been working on based on the idea of the Hiraishin that he knew would end the fight quickly. That being said, Naruto threw many kunai, shuriken, and other weapons at Hametsu. He blocked them all, but he wasn't sure what was going on. Naruto then ran at Hametsu like a fast animal in a wild flurry. Trina, fine white hair, Naruto said, and all of his weapons suddenly returned to his hand one by one. He then completely defeated the bigger man with the lightning, like blades that would appear and disappear from his hands. Instead of being teleported to a marked location, Naruto brings marked objects to himself in the same way, which means he can never really lose a weapon and can surprise the enemy when they think they have the upper hand. It can also work on other people. It also gave him access to new and useful tools, and once someone was marked, they could not get away from him. Naruto finished his attack and watched as Hametsu's wounds erupted in blood. He then jumped into the air to finish him off, but Hametsu grabbed him by the head and slammed him into the metal floor of the train, roaring as he did it. Hametsu told Naruto, who was dazed and in pain from the blow, "With your death there shall be peace, and I will savor that peace." He knew the man was strong. He then used Trina to call up a kunai to his left and a Tonbogiri to his right. As Hametsu raised his right arm to punch Naruto in the ribs, the blonde directed wind chakra into the kunai. Both of them launched their arms at the same time, but Naruto's kunai cut Hametsu's arm in half, sending him screaming in pain and blood flying everywhere. The man in the mask knelt down and screamed in pain. This was his last mistake, because Naruto rolled to the side and swung the Tonbogiri across Hametsu's neck, cutting off his head. There was blood all over the place and the body was falling to the ground. While he lay on the ground, Naruto took deep, relaxing breaths. The cursed seal that Obito put on him covered every part of his body. His hair was stained red from the blood that was dripping down his chin and neck after the bandages had come off. He coughed up more blood. He then, however, picked himself up after a lot of work and kept going. When he got to the next carriage with the Tonbogiri sealed in his wrists, he ran into someone else. He would love it if someone would just let him do it once. To hear someone say, "Hey, do what you want, we won't stop you." That's how cruel fate is. She was a thin woman who looked a little older than him. Her blonde hair was slicked back in the same color as his. Two long strands were styled into antennae that were pointing backwards. She wore light pink lipstick and had bright green eyes. She wore long, skin-tight leather pants and high heels. Her gloves were black opera style and had spikes on the knuckles. The leather bikini she wore under the Kumogakure flak jacket was a surprise. She also had a tattoo on her right shoulder that said, "Violence" in Japanese characters. And a choker chain with spikes around her neck. Ninfu Boruto knows about her too. She was giving him a sly grin and putting her hand on her waist. Naruto knew he was in a tough spot because the seal covering his body was taking away most of his power. He needed to make a stable plan to save Konan. He could do what Hametsu did, or he could just touch her and she'd be dead. Naruto walked up to her without being scared of her. He stood in front of her, his body close to hers. Ninfu said, "Well, this is going to be fun." Naruto clenched his teeth and aimed for a palm strike to her face, but she easily avoided it and kicked him away, making him back in pain. "Is that all? I was promised something more spectacular." The blonde gave the woman a mean look and tried to use Trina, but the seal stopped him. He didn't think he could use even his strongest jutsu. He was having trouble keeping up his Sharingan. Suddenly, he jumped at Ninfu and tried a bunch of punches and kicks, but she easily avoided or blocked them all. The Kumo ninja laughed at his weak attempts, since he moved slowly and his moves were easy to guess. To attack her again, he only had to touch her once. But it didn't help because she kept avoiding them and blocking every attack with great skill. She then kicked him in the face with a roundhouse kick, making him fall to the ground. He quickly got up and threw a kunai at her, but she caught it in the air and threw it back at him, hitting him in the shoulder. Then she tried to hit him in the face with an axe kick, but he just barely rolled away in time. He stood up and took the kunai off his shoulder. He then tried to punch her again, but she caught his arm, kicked him in the face, threw him over her shoulder, and stomped on his ribs. She then jumped and skated all around him, and his offensive hits barely touched her. She was also feinting and attacking him, leaving him on the defensive. But he was getting more and more angry at the woman for making him look like a fool. She would be dead without the seal, he thought. Then he tried to hit her in the face with his kunai, but she dove out of the way and elbowed him in the stomach. She then backhanded him, elbowed him in the thigh, and tried to kick him in the chest, but he dodged the blow. It seemed like she thought his attacks were child's play to her, like he was one of her toys that she could break at any time. She then sent a lightning jutsu straight at him, which he just barely avoided while still grinning at her. Naruto had had enough of her nonsense and tried to kick her, but she easily blocked it. Then she spun around on her hands, making the blonde man lose his balance with her flayed out limbs. Whenever she turned around him, she tried to kick him from above, so he stepped back to avoid it. But then she punched him in the gut, which knocked him backwards. Then he rushed forward and tried to hit her one last time, but it didn't work like the others had. When she had had enough, she went on the attack and hit him several times with punches and kicks that he couldn't avoid or barely block. Dazed and shocked him. Then she kicked him in the face with a roundhouse kick, but he caught it and pulled her toward him to try to punch her in the throat. She just put her hands on the ground to break free from his grip. She then grabbed his arm, pinned him, and slammed him face first into the ground. The impact was so strong that he was almost knocked out, but he was too weak to fight back. Ninfu pulled out a single kunai while he was lying on the ground and got ready to pierce his throat. She was about to kill him when the sound of breaking glass caught her attention. A black and red shadow attacked her by taking out a red sword and aiming for an upward cut. The shadow then tried to cut her stomach, but she dodged and put the sword back in its sheath. Ninfu didn't know what happened next because the shadow appeared right in front of her. This person had even bigger and stronger chakra than Ninfu. She couldn't think any further because the shadow was aiming for an upward kick that the Kumo Nin just barely blocked. It was so strong that it cut her elbows, and then it hit her in the neck with such force that she fell to the ground. Then she got up and kicked the red and black blur with a roundhouse kick, but the shadow easily dodged it. After defeating her opponent, the shade did an axe kick on top of Ninfu's head, sending her skull tumbling to the ground. The blur then did another axe kick on Ninfu's spine. As Ninfu was getting up from the ground after getting hit, she was punched in the gut so hard that she almost vomited blood. It was like a bolt of lightning, and Ninfu was gone before anyone else could hurt her. The shade rose to their full height and looked at where the Kumo Nin was standing. Then they looked at Naruto, who had seen the whole thing happen. From what Naruto could see, they looked like. Based on her shape, it looked like a woman was wearing a short black and red kimono dress with a red belt that had pictures of mountains, trees, and birds on it. She wore a lot of necklaces with beads strung around them. She wore armor on her right hip and scaled armor on her arms and hands. She also had a furry piece attached to her skirt that looked like a wolf's tail. She wore thigh-high black boots with red splatters on them and a sheath with a red sword on her left hip, which probably showed that she was right-handed. But what made her stand out the most was a mask over her face that looked like a white raven with red spots on it. The mask had 4 eye holes that made it look scary, and the person had long black furry hair that went down to their waist, which I'm not sure was part of the mask or not. Naruto asked her, "Who are you?" as she stared up at him. She didn't answer, but instead walked up to him and took something that looked like white powder from a pouch on her side. She covered Naruto's forehead and chin with the white powder that she got on her fingers. Then she took off his armored left arm and put more powder on it. After that, she made a single seal. The black cursed seals on Naruto's body started to come together on his left arm. Once they looked like they did before, Naruto stood up from where he was sitting on the ground and squeezed his hand to make sure it was as strong as it was before. The person in red and black then started to walk away. But she said 4 words before she left and walked out of the room through a door. As she walked out the door, the blonde saw no more of her. "A survivor, like you." Naruto got back on his feet and crossed the train, not knowing what had just happened. He was going back to his original goal. Naruto ran into the person who made his life what it is as he got to the next carriage. "Thank you." Obito said, "Naruto, I missed you. We need to stop meeting like this. What will people think?" But Naruto took off the seal on the Tanbogiri and charged at Obito. Thanks to that mysterious girl, Naruto was able to send chakra into Obito's left eye without the seal stopping him. As Obito was about to hit Naruto with his Ganabi, the blonde slowed down time and appeared behind Obito, where his blade cut right through the Uchiha's body. Obito kicked Naruto away, but the blonde dodged the blow. They both jumped into the air and their weapons hit each other. Naruto won that little fight where Obito was pushed back to the ground and then his younger opponent tried to stab him in the head, but Obito flipped backwards and blocked the attack. It was hard for the masked Uchiha to keep up with Naruto as he chased after him. He turned into a whirlwind of black steel. Then Naruto took out a kunai from his wrist seal and attacked Obito with it. Naruto tried to hit Obito with an upward slash with the Tanbogiri, but Obito just barely avoided it and got a cut on his robe from its special ability. Naruto then tried to cut him with the kunai, but Obito dodged both of them with skill. After his attack, Naruto followed it up with a series of punches and kicks that Obito saw coming with his Sharingan. What Obito didn't see coming, though, were the two weapons Naruto threw and then instantly returned to his hand with no warning. Naruto then cut another part of Obito's robe. The older man was shocked to see that his enemy was just a tornado of weapons that threw them around and then came back to him. They didn't even touch them. Then Naruto let out a huge gust of wind that knocked Obito off his feet and made him fall to the ground. When the Uchiha tried to get up, he felt something pressing against his chest. It was his skilled opponent, who was holding the Tanbogiri up to his face with an armored clawed foot. Obito asked Naruto, "Has it ever occurred to you, have you ever thought, why, we are fighting? You know that we both want the same thing," but Naruto just glared at him and moved his sword closer to the mask. Mean, like a wolf. So what are we going to do now? You could kill me to get back at her, or is my death not enough to quench your vengeance? But do you really think that some little girl will make you forget what you were, what you did, and all the lives you took and ruined? People call me a monster. So what are you going to do? If you kill me, you'll never see her again, and after Danzo's done with her, you won't want to see her again. Naruto ran through the carriages until he reached an empty platform where only Konan, Danzo, Obito, and Naruto himself were present. Obito's body vanished into a spiraling vortex. Konan was tied down and lying at Danzo's feet. While lying on the ground, Obito said, "See, I told you he would come." Gunbai was in front of him. "Naruto Uzumaki, on the orders of Tsunade Senju, the Godem Hokage, you are to be killed. You and your children and grandchildren will never again threaten the safety, stability, and peace of Konoha." Danzo said this as he walked up to the blonde who was staring daggers into his head. It was Naruto who said, "Give me Konan. I won't even take a single step in Konoha. This can all end if you don't hurt her." But he was quickly put on his knees and coughed up a lot of blood across his hand. "You don't look good. It might be smarter for you to leave. This person knows too much about the Akatsuki to just let her go again," Danzo said as he pulled out a sword and pointed it at Konan's face. The cloth around her mouth was taken off by Danzo, which let her speak. Last rites. The last thing Konan said before Danzo stabbed her in the head and killed her was, "Naruto, don't worry about me. Everything will be okay. I won't leave you alone. I'm coming, just. So wait for me. Okay." Such a brave attempt. I was expecting her to say something different. Oh well, what's done is done. Throw her body over the edge, Danzo said as Obito did so, and her bloody body broke when it hit the ground. Naruto didn't say anything but dropped the Tanbogiri with shock and grief in his eyes. The Tanbogiri beating next to him. Danzo told Uchiha, "He's your problem now. Finish what you started 15 years ago." But before they could do anything, Naruto's left arm lit up with 3 blood red seals. It was beating like a heart, faster and faster, until the seal broke and pieces of paper started falling to the ground. 4 long black ropes with silver blades on the ends shot out from Naruto's waist. Still, things got worse. Naruto's hair fell over his eyes, hiding them from view. He was screaming and gasping for air, and it looked like his eyes were glowing red. Obito was scared after the 3 seals were broken. Before Obito knew it, Naruto was nowhere to be seen, but then he reappeared above him and threw 2 of his ropes at the Uchiha. The Uchiha barely blocked them with his gunbai, but Naruto wasn't done yet. He used 2 more ropes to try to cut the older Sharingan user. Naruto had his hands on his head and said, "Dark, desperate, death to make myself alive." Worm, crawling on the ground. Broken body, bleeding hands, stone ground and guts gripping, dead like spoiled fish. Obito knew exactly what it was. Naruto was a special case before he went to Root. Because of all the abuse he had been through, he created a second personality to protect the first one. Only the worst things could make this personality come out. The Hana instinct thing first showed up when the blonde was attacked by a drunk person one sad night. Since then, the Sandaime Hokage has kept it hidden with one of the seals on Naruto's left arm. Obito had a good idea about the other two broken seals, but it didn't matter. Flesh, tasty juicy, everywhere. Voice says stop, no, need to die, he hurt us. He has to hurt too. Naruto then jumped at Obito, where the rope and the gunbai hit each other. Danzo was covered in black ink, and he was gone, leaving Obito to deal with the crazy boy. Obito kept swinging his powerful gunbai at Naruto, but the wild blonde kept dodging and blocking each attack like it was a fly that wasn't going to be hit. Obito hit the rope with his Ganabi, but it wouldn't move. So he broke through the defenses, jumped into the air, and hit Naruto on the shoulder with his Ganabi. Naruto screamed in pain, but Naruto quickly pushed Obito away with one of his chakra ropes. As they went through a narrow tunnel, the train kept going and going, and Naruto was jumping all over the place like a grasshopper. Obito had a hard time keeping him in sight. Naruto attacked all at once, and Obito had to roll away to avoid getting hit. The Uchiha had to move through a lot of attacks and slashes that killed. The Uzumaki had lost any intelligence it had had and was now a wild animal. Naruto roared in anger, almost as if he were an animal. As another rope slithered its way toward Obito, the Uchiha had to constantly defend himself from attacks. The blonde was really working him out. She made him use his hands to move quickly, and his flexibility made him very quick and flexible. Then they locked themselves in a room together, and Naruto kept hitting Obito with his black chakra rope. They kept hitting each other over and over, but neither could get the upper hand. Finally, Naruto jumped into the air and hit Obito with a stronger blow that knocked him off his feet. He then stabbed his ropes into the train's metal, which he used as a springboard to get around the Uchiha. He then growled like an animal and threw one of his 4 ropes at Obito, hoping the silver blade ornament would cut him. But Obito ducked under it and slammed his gunbai into Naruto's stomach, making the younger Sharingan user cough hard and start bleeding from his mouth. He didn't have much time left to fight because the Kekkei Genkai was eating his body. The rope that he had pulled out of his back started to go back into his body. He put his hands over his head as a flood of images rushed into his mind and tried to pull him out of the abyss. Things that he did or had done. They were all mixed up, and he didn't know how to make sense of them. He wanted to scream, no, he wanted to claw out the memories that were coming back to him. He couldn't think about it any longer because Obito flew over him and used his broken gunbai to try to break his skull apart. Naruto rolled forward and grabbed the Tanbogiri again. This time, he blocked Obito's horizontal attack and jumped back from the Uchiha. His mind was still a mess, and he was coughing up more blood and shaking his head non-stop as memories hit him in the head. Obito attacked again, but this time his swings were stronger, and Naruto was just barely able to block them. They got on a narrow tunnel cut into the side of a mountain while still on the moving train. There, they kept running into each other and getting into violent fights where sparks and splinters flew everywhere. He locked the Tanbogiri away and used hand seals to get a jutsu. Naruto called out, Rantan Ogi, Rankiryu, Storm Release Secret Technique, Demon Dragon Storm. As he gathered dark thunderclouds around him. He then told the storm to move forward toward Obito, filling the whole tunnel with thunder and electricity. Obito tried to stop the storm with his gunbai, but it didn't work.
He was sucked into his pocket dimension to wait it out.
The storm that Naruto had summoned took a while to pass, and by that time he had lost sight of his enemy again. He was coughing harder and losing more blood. He couldn't even stand up straight.
Then Obito showed up behind him, and they both locked their weapons together.
To do all these things is something only special, only few shinobi can accomplish, but still. Stated Obito. Obito kicked Naruto away and across the train to the other end. Naruto then tried to flip Obito over and slash him across the chest at the same time. When Naruto tried to escape, Obito swung his big weapon down at him and stabbed his blade into the roof of the tunnel. I can feel it, your body is becoming weaker and weaker as we fight. You won't be able to keep this up for much longer. Then Naruto charged at Obito with his sword and tried to cut him in half with the Tanbogiri, but the older Sharingan wielder stepped to the side and kicked Naruto into the tunnel wall. Naruto braced himself, landed against the wall, and his feet dug into the stone before he jumped back and attacked Obito, swinging his sword across the Uchiha's chest, where it went right through. They locked swords again and kept trading blows with each other. Then Obito hit Naruto in the face with the gunbai's handle. Naruto was looking weaker and weaker by the second. Obito's cheap shot knocked Naruto out for a split second. Obito then took away the Tanbogiri and threw it into a nearby train, where it hit hard. Obito then tried to cut Naruto's head off, but the blonde just bent backwards to avoid the blow, before turning over and getting his sword again. In a moment of genius or stupidity, Naruto ran up the length of the tunnel, picking up speed as he did so. He then jumped at Obito and tried a vertical slash, but the Uchiha blocked it with his gunbai. Naruto then let go of his weapon, grabbed Obito by the mask, and slammed his head against the tunnel wall, sending sparks flying. No one would have seen Obito's mask or what was left of his face if he hadn't punched Naruto in the gut and kicked him away. Very good, but you should probably know, I haven't even used my full strength, but at this pace you will be too weak to even fight back. You only hasten the inevitable, Obito said as they locked weapons again. After breaking the lock, Obito smashed Naruto in the face with the shaft of his gunbai, stunning him. The blonde barely blocked his next attack, but Obito then slashed Naruto in the face with the gunbai, leaving a big cut and almost destroying his left eye. Obito's eye was spared, thank goodness, but Naruto glared at him through his fingers as he jumped away and held his bleeding face. It was just a warning strike. You deny yourself and your blade its true nature, you both yearn to bathe in the blood of our fathers and enemies. But you suppress it, you hold back that savage nature of yours. I remember a boy who could spit in the face of death and laugh, where he killed anything that moved and was unafraid to hurt himself if it meant hurting his enemies. Naruto didn't respond to him other than taking a combat ready posture once more. After that, Obito sent fire chakra into his gunbai and set it on fire. Naruto had to move back or the fire would burn him up. Now Obito's attacks were more focused and powerful, hitting the Tanbogiri's metal all the time. Naruto had to jump away and send an explosive tag at Obito. It went off behind him and blew up the train, but Obito came out of the tunnel unharmed and was about to hit Naruto with the huge war fan. They fought again, and neither gave up nor ran away. However, Obito noticed that Naruto's movements were slowing down. He said that after a day of fighting, his body was breaking down, which was obviously meant to be sarcastic. Metal and flames kept hitting each other. Obito saw a weak spot in Naruto's defenses and slashed the Uzumaki across the stomach, letting blood burst from the wound fall like a waterfall. He held his gut open while coughing up more blood. Naruto just couldn't give up, he wasn't going to lose. He charged at Obito and swung his sword at him in an instant. The two weapons clashed again, and this time it was probably for the last time. The black metal of the Tanbogiri broke into several black shards, leaving only the hilt of the blade intact. Naruto could only stare in shock as the legendary weapon, known for its strength, was broken into many pieces that were probably too damaged to be fixed. The shards clattered on the ground and flew everywhere. He couldn't think about it any longer though, because Obito ran past him and swung his gunbai. Naruto wasn't hurt, and he didn't even notice the attack until it was too late. When he turned to his right, he saw that most of his right arm was missing and flailing around in the air. Time seemed to slow down for him. He watched as most of it died and fell to the ground, blood spurting out of it, while Obito smiled behind his mask. Blood kept pouring out of the wound and staining the metal floor of the train Naruto was standing on. Before he could think of anything else, the blonde man was swatted to the ends of the train, where he held on for dear life, even though he felt like his life wasn't worth much without her. Obito held his gunbai up to Naruto's face and said, "This is what happens when an ant lifts a mountain." As they came out of the tunnel, Obito said, "Say hello to your father for me." He was about to deliver the killing blow when he felt a disturbance in the air. He put down his weapon and looked up at the sky. Then he saw it. The thing with the big wings of a bird flying straight at him. Its wings hit his gunbai and cracked it, and several projectiles were fired at him, which he just ignored. Seeing this as a chance, the being with wings grabbed Naruto and took off, leaving Obito on the train to watch them. But his prey got away. He had been in the sky for a long time, but he kept losing consciousness. His senses were dulled, and he thought he was going to die any second. It had been a terrible day for him, filled with ghosts, pain, and death. His body's limits were being pushed, and he had a lot of questions that needed to be answered. He also had a lot of memories of his past self, the one who worked with Root. He could remember everything he did and how he messed things up. Every bit of it. At first, they were just flashes, but now it was like I couldn't avoid seeing the world. There was no life in his Sharingan, and his eyes were heavy. Soft hands were around his middle, holding him close as he flew through the clouds. He couldn't see what was holding him, but he thought it might be a bird because he could see its strong wings battling the weight of the world. From his point of view, being above the clouds and enjoying the sun's warmth was a beautiful sight. He had never been so happy and at peace before. His mind must have been in heaven, because it's easy to think that could be the case. He thought he heard someone calling his name. The voice was musical, like a symphony from an orchestra. As he let rest take over, his eyes closed, and he dreamed for the first time in years. His dream was pretty easy. He was sitting on a porch on a cool winter morning when all of a sudden his two children jumped up and slammed him to the ground. He couldn't see their faces, but he knew he loved them anyway. His wife was knitting something in the house before she came out the door with a smile on her face and a warm hug for her family. Then, his oldest child threw a snowball in his face while laughing loudly. He laughed back and threw one back in a playful way, and then everyone else joined in, even their mother, who sided with her two children against their father. He woke up slowly from his dream when he was laid down on something soft and sweet smelling. When he opened his tired eyes, he saw soft pink flowers and bright green grass all around him. White birds were flying above him, chirping in unison to the music they were playing in the sky above puffy cream clouds. His eyes got used to the bright light around him until they found a color that was familiar, bright blue hair and worried amber eyes. When he saw her face, he smiled. Naruto said with some trouble but still a silly grin on his face, "You really fooled me there for a moment. I thought you were dead. I'm glad you're alright. I told you I was coming, but you had to do something stupid anyway." Idiot, she choked Conan as she held his head in her lap and stroked his eyebrows, which made him feel better. She was about to cry herself because she saw how badly he was hurt, with a cut over his eye, a gash across his stomach, and an arm missing. "I made a clone of myself, the one using your Sharingan. I was going to kill Danzo and Obito in one swift move so you wouldn't hurt yourself trying to do so yourself. Well, I'm glad I have you to correct me. When I do something stupid," Naruto said, his tired grin growing wider and his eyes almost collapsing again. Conan almost wanted to slap him upside the head for being so careless and stupid, and that's when she shed a few tears that fell on Naruto's face. Naruto told her, "Shish. Don't cry. You only cry when you're happy. And when you cry, I hurt." He wiped her tears away with the other arm and then gently cupped her chin in his warm smile. As their lips touched tenderly, he pushed himself up with all the strength he still had. The effect was instant, like fireworks going off. His feelings for her that he had been holding back came out in that kiss. But even so, his words showed that he was confused. He had no idea what it was, but he wanted to know. When Conan kissed him back, he enjoyed the taste of his lips and the emotion that came through them. It was pure and honest, just a way to show how he felt. Once they were apart, Conan saw that he still had the same smile on his face. He had his eyes closed, though, and his chest was moving up and down slowly. She held his head in the crook of her neck with her lips quivering and tears running down her face onto his neck as the colorful wind blew through the beautiful flower field. Things were just getting started today. The war dogs will be let loose on the world. She was very excited as she watched his chest move softly back and forth, humming like a butterfly's wings. All of this was her fault. She was the one who made the man lying in front of her so tired. She was very sure of herself, or rather, she would call it arrogance, because of how he was acting. He looked like he was about to die because she hadn't told him about her plan. She thought she could beat both Danzo and Obito, but the Uchiha was much stronger than anyone thought. He could see the effect of his power in Naruto's hurt body. The ends of his hair were black and burned, and he had a horrible gash over his left eye and a terrible burn on his face that covered his right eye. Luckily, neither of his eyes was hurt, and bandages were wrapped around his head to hide them. Naruto might not have hit his intestines if Obito had given the swing more force. He had a big cut on his stomach. She then looked at the ugly reminder of how far he would go for her, the gnarled stump on his right shoulder. Just thinking about it made her want to protect her from the ghosts of his past, even if it meant putting himself in danger. It felt like a feather was dancing in her heart. Then, she ran a soft hand through his golden, burned hair. As she smoothed her hand over his head, the man's body relaxed into her embrace as if a heavy weight had been lifted. Without realizing it, he had buried his head in her hand, trying to feel the enlightening touch and the pure warmth it gave him. As she watched him, she smiled. A simple word could say a lot. She wondered what drove him to face challenges that most people would avoid, including putting himself in danger knowing that he could die and giving up everything to find her, even if it meant being alone and sad. Why would he give up everything he had worked for to save someone who couldn't do anything for him? Why would he chase her with such zeal that she would think he was crazy? If he was only going to lose what he loved, why go so far? The answer was clear to her. Love. There is a force that is both strong and unknown, and it is very mysterious how it can capture the mind and heart in different ways. Some things are so strong in love that all reason can't see them. This includes the truth and everything else. No one knew how far someone would go for love because it had such a vague meaning that people could ask about it their whole lives and never get an answer. They would only know it was real. When you lose someone you love, you might become desperate. Maybe even so desperate that you bury the truth to avoid the pain and reminder of it. Love was so strong that it could make even the toughest people weak. Whatever the reason, she knew he loved her. He might not have known, might have refused to admit it, might have been scared of it. That she knew he loved her, and that she had fallen in love with him, she loved him too. As it was said, love is so mysterious that it could take years for it to show up, or it could happen right away, or just one word between them could make them fall in love. But for them, it was small things like trust and kindness that led to this. Naruto said to Konan in his mind, "Don't go. If you leave my life, all the colors will be turned gray, and that will be too much to bear to live with. Please don't leave me." As a few tears ran down his cheeks and into the bandages around his eyes. Konan gave Naruto a warm smile, bent down, and kissed his salty tears away. Her small actions were working, because while Konan kissed his tears, Naruto relaxed and let out a soft breath of pleasure. Once she didn't have to help him anymore, she looked at his sleeping face with soft eyes, hoping that the dream he was having would make all of his pain go away. She couldn't hold back the smile on her face as she slowly lowered her lips to his and gave him a pure, loving kiss. She was happy to just enjoy the moment. But she was sure he kissed her back. In Danzo's office at Konoha, there was only one flickering candle in the dark room. His one eye watched the dancing flame as if it had a life of its own. The plan in the land of spring didn't work, and all the sacrifices were pointless because of an unknown factor.
That lady.
The same one he had seen all those years ago. An original Akatsuki member. Hi, Konan. She was to blame for this because she took Naruto to a safe place when he was about to lose. On top of that, the blonde Uzumaki had brought back the amazing power that made him the most feared person in the world. All of that power that they had locked up is now free to use. Fuinjutsu was a very dangerous art, and only the Uzumaki were able to fully understand it and break through its mysteries. Danzo narrowed his eyes and looked at the candle flame. It looked just like Naruto Uzumaki, making fun of him right in front of him. Not only had they failed to capture Hiriko, but that wasn't even close to their main concern. The blonde's new and old power was something to fear, if not admire. Anyone who was close to Naruto was in danger as long as he lived. His power was nothing to be afraid of. No, what he really needed to be afraid of was the Fuinjutsu he was now using. It would be impossible for Danzo to properly control or kill the blonde and wipe him off the face of the earth again. He would have to go back to his roots in Root, when the famous Tekurufu was so feared that even people in Root feared him. That blonde wasn't a shinobi. He was a warlord, which was much worse. Soon after Danzo clapped his hands, several Root commanders showed up in front of him and bowed their heads to show respect for the elder of Konoha. Danzo said with a scowl, "Get the troops ready to march to Uzushiogakure. I think it's time to get back what is rightfully mine." The thought of going to the run down ruin made him feel disgusted. But what was there was worth much more than any life in the world. It would be his. Tsunade was in her office when she heard that the plan to kill Ryu Yokazi had gone wrong. The wolf had shown that he was smarter than anyone she knew. And even though Dan said they were about to kill him, he got away at the last second and was taken to safety. Tsunade rubbed her forehead in anger. Yokaze was always on her mind. She was always making plans, thinking of strategies, and picturing him dancing in her head. It made no sense to her and made her very angry. It would have been nice if Jiraiya was here to calm her down and give her some advice on a certain matter. She really wanted to go to the hot springs and relax in the steamy water, but then she remembered something. She had been having trouble with something for a while. One of the last things she had from the Sandaime Hokage was a rough, worn-out journal that she took out of her drawer. She looked at the book cover by running her fingers over its dirty brown cover. One page in the book told her it would teach her a lot about a certain person, so she turned it over. Naruto Uzumaki, during the time when he was very good at Fuinjutsu but still a very active kid. She read the words slowly and carefully, skimming over each one to see what she might find. Going back. It looked like bricks were stacked on top of him, making his body heavy. He left scuff marks and tracks in the dirt with his feet as he walked. His face was dirty and bruised, and he didn't seem to be feeling anything. His clothes, which were just blue pants and a short-sleeved shirt with a flame on it, had tears and rips in them. They were also dirty and grimy. On top of that, he had cuts and bruises that were still bleeding and infected. His lip was also split. His golden hair was dirty and didn't look as bright as it usually did, almost like the sun had gone out. He was crying, and the tears were running down his face like water on glass. This was just another day in his life. Taking what other people threw away. It was the selfish things that people did that he thought were the worst sins, because they didn't realize what a gift it was to be them. They were only after what they had. He had nothing but the torn clothes on his back that didn't fit right. They were happy with their families. Putting his hand over his wet eyes, he let out a scream that could be heard all over the village. His cries were so loud and pleading that they hurt your ears.
He wanted love but wasn't given it.
"Why do I have to be punished?" asked the 4-year-old boy, whose mind seemed much smarter than it was. Konoha looks out for their own. The shinobi fight without flinching to protect what was precious to them. That's a lie. And the old man knows it. The Sandaime claims to care about me. He claimed to be like a grandfather to me. But why did he abandon me? When I needed him most. Why does everybody have to randomly die? Why is everything I have gone? Desperately holding on to the hope that the next day will be better? Like the sky, growing brighter with the day. Losing everything for the sake of not losing anything. Trying hard to hold on to life. It's because I don't know what to do, that I blindly cling to the day, trying to live. No matter what. It's already too unbearable. I've had enough. I've had enough. I've had enough. Said Naruto as more tears ran down his face. Having to deal with so much pain just by living. The boy kept walking through the village, even though the dark clouds said it was going to rain. It was always the same, no matter what kind of connection he made with someone. Not being with him. To go through pain alone. Naruto yelled again as he finally stopped walking and sat down on the ground in an alleyway with his legs raised up to his chest. The old man told me that my parents would never leave me alone. But what good are cold corpses? They left me alone just like everyone else. His thoughts were all over the place as he stared at the dirty ground. Why did he have to go through pain? Why couldn't other people feel his pain? It's not like he cared about anything. His eyes were closed as he thought about the family he never had and how much he wanted one. He only wanted to hold hands with someone. It started to rain on him right then, but it didn't seem to bother him much. As he looked to his left, he picked up a loose newspaper, threw it over his head, and then went back to his position of being sad. He just sat there in the rain and thought about how bad his life was. A lot of people wouldn't answer his calls for information. Why, though? Was the most important thing to him. He turned his head just then, in the middle of the night, through the loud sound of rain. He saw a shadow standing over him. A face as still as stone, intimidating and stoic. Naruto looked at the shadow without caring at all. He knew who it belonged to but didn't care at all. He saw him as a hypocritical monkey scratching at the moon's reflection in a puddle. Even though he was very smart, he could only see what he wanted to see. He wasn't aware of what was going on around him. As it rained, the Sandaime Hokage's hat dripped, and his formal robe got wet and soggy. He wore his hands behind his back. The boy was being looked down at. As Hiruzen extended his hand to the child, "Let's go, Naruto. You'll catch a cold." The child looked down his nose at the old man and frowned a little. Was that look full of mistrust, or was it just hate for him? Even though Hiruzen wasn't smart enough to know, he was sure that Naruto was lost. He was lost in the raging storm in his mind and couldn't find his way out. He would stay there until Naruto took his hand, so he went ahead and stood there. That was the time. Once Naruto found his true calling. Like a wolf has many teeth. End of flashback. If Tsunade read that simple part, she would sigh. But that sigh was one of sadness for herself. She knew everything about Naruto Uzumaki just from reading that short passage. She had let him down. It's that easy. Everyone was to blame, not just her. He might have become strong enough to beat Ryu Yokaze and become Hokage if he had lived. She couldn't think about that for too long. She turned the page to read another part of her mentor's journal. Going back. Naruto had been dirty and alone on the street for 5 years when the Sandaime Hokage found him. He was sure that Naruto could change his life after 5 long years. He discovered his gold cave in the form of a seal, where the boy showed he was a genius far beyond his years. His creativity had become his most powerful tool, as he was always coming up with new seals that helped both himself and others. His best work was a seal that made inanimate objects move. The boy found a Sanagakure puppet and put a seal on it. The puppet then moved and talked like a real person. The boy, who was 9 years old at the time, quickly made the puppet his helper and named it Koa. But unfortunately, even though he was a genius when it came to making inventions, when he tried to sell his goods to stores, they all turned him down because of who he was, which stirred up old grudges. He barely had enough money to get by, but he wasted it on things like ink, paper, and anything else that could be sealed. Hiruzen was on his way to Naruto's apartment to check on the boy and put him in touch with a very important person who might be able to help the boy's life. Maybe even more than the Hokage could. So the kid. What's he like? Asked the Hokage's friend as the old man looked at the person from the corner of his eyes. He's a lot like you in many ways. Though he's mistrusting of strangers and people in general. With good reason. Though all he really wants is the things everyone else has, and to be free and uninhibited. Though recently resent has been building up inside him, especially resentment towards me. He feels I'm incapable of punishing those who wrong him. He believes that there will be no one he can truly trust. This mindset isn't healthy, especially for a young boy such as him, where they are easily impressionable. What he needs isn't a grandfather looking over his shoulder. Rather, what he needs is a kindred spirit to whom he can connect to. While he claims he's better off living alone, what he hates most is solitude. Expressed the Hokage, to which his companion merely sadly looked at the ground. Well, in more crude terms, I'm hoping you can knock some sense into him. The two people then went to the Jinchuriki's apartment and the older of them knocked on the door a few times. Naruto, it's the Hokage. Please open up. I need to meet someone, Hiruzen asked, but Naruto didn't answer. He grabbed the door handle and slowly slid it open. He found an empty apartment with only paper and seals on the walls and floor, as well as empty ramen cups and chopsticks. With a sigh, the Hokage looked at it. It was clear that the boy wasn't at home and was out having fun. So he's not here. No, but he will show up. He's just waiting for his chance to soar. Just follow the shouting, Hiruzen told his friend as they left the room. Sometimes, when a bird is caught in a cage, as long as they wait long enough, they will find the chance to set their spirit free and fly like their great ancestors. For one bird, or maybe a fox, or maybe a wolf. You could call him anything you liked. Was letting go of the chains that held him back and letting his natural self fly. He was up in the sky, away from anyone who might be judging him. He wasn't being held back or pulled down by bars. The sky was the world's truest form of freedom. As well as Naruto Uzumaki. There was nothing better about it. Going over rocks and trees, a plateau and a forest. Naruto was just having fun with his newest creation. One that no mind in the world could have thought of. He was really riding on a cloud. You could also call it a disc. There was a space under it big enough for two people, and winds were constantly pushing it up. It was a pretty piece of art. In the middle there were 3 swirling wind imprints, and around the disc were more wind imprints and a cyan. glow ring with 8 glowing gems that had black sigils on them. Higher, the blonde thought as the disc rose into the sky and climbed like a ladder. With a chant of higher, Naruto went even further, breaking through the clouds to soak up the sun's rays. From where he stood, the village and the whole world seemed like tiny dots when he looked back down. He was still very excited as he continued to rise through the sky, though. Just as he reached the peak of what the disc could do, the wind that was carrying the disc died down where the Kyuubi Jinchuriki spread his arms out and let himself fall back to the ground. Putting his sapphire eyes shut, he watched as the disc and his body moved in all directions in the air. The wind and air blew past him and the disc, hitting him in the face as he surfed the air. He turned his body so that his head was facing the ground and spun like a stop sign. He turned on his flying disc again just as he was about to hit the ground and probably kill himself. He then raced through the streets of Konoha, laughing and screaming for fun. People on those streets had to duck for cover because the flying disc was moving so fast that it could knock them over. Naruto was having as much fun as any 9-year-old could as the disc spun through the crowds of people and buildings. The blonde had the disc grind across the railings and building sides as he gradually rose. Sparks flew as he did this. Then he got close to the end of the street, where the only way out was through a very small opening between 2 buildings.
That kind of thing would scare most people.
The blue-eyed boy, on the other hand, just grinned as he kicked the flying disc, which was soaring on its side while the boy stood on the edge of the disc. The winds below are no longer holding it up. In a flash, the boy and his invention snuck into the small opening.
It was so tight that the disc hit the sides of the opening a little,
while Naruto worked hard not to hit his head on the building's hard bricks. As soon as he got out of the gap, he put the disc back where it was before, screaming and woohooing as his adrenaline rushed through him. Yes, this moment could not go wrong for him. Except for the part where he hit a cabbage stand. Destruction of the stand and its cabbages in every way. No. Not my cabbages, yelled the owner as he fell to his knees and cried manly tears. When he looked up, a cloud of dust had formed around his cabbages. Naruto jumped out of the dust and started pumping his arms in the air. He was so happy with what he had made. The boy pulled the large disc, about the size of a man, out of the cloud where it was deactivated and useless. Okay. I knew adding that protection seal to the Tsubasa was a good idea, but I'm going to have to work on the brakes, he said. The people on the street were staring at him with rage the whole time. He wasn't paying attention to or caring about the looks. They weren't going anywhere. Everything was about the Tsubasa, his newest creation. He also didn't notice the rock that flew through the air and hit him on the forehead, just above his right eye. Soon, small drops of blood came out of an open wound as he pressed his hand against it and jerked in pain as he looked at the blood.
Someone always had a reason for doing these things to him.
The blonde turned on the Kemari again, jumped on, and sat down on the disc. It then started to float back to his apartment. He didn't get very far, though, because the blonde was kicked away from the disc that was hovering above him. She fell to the ground and groaned in mild pain. Hey, what's the big deal? Naruto yelled at the rude man who was blocking his masterpiece. The man with the bushy mustache and hands on his hips yelled, "You little pest. You almost killed someone." Well, he's not dead, so I don't see the problem. Naruto yelled back. The man's forehead veins got tight, and he grabbed Naruto by the shirt. You should have learned your place a long time ago, Naruto told the man, but he couldn't say anything else because 4 black ropes with silver blades on them were aimed at his back and started to grow from Naruto's. The blonde went one step further by putting his hand on the man's stomach and making a long blade out of it. There were small golden balls on the blade. Just try it. I dare you, Naruto said, his eyes turning red and his glare getting tighter on the man, who was starting to sweat because he knew he was in danger. After that, the man let go of Naruto just as Anbu arrived and put both of them in jail. Great. In the office of the Hokage, the man in question was working on his never-ending stack of papers while his friend sat in the corner. So, is the kid doing all right? He's had some rough spots this year, but he seems to be accepting his role and trying to make a difference, even if he doesn't want to. But I do think he's starting to turn a corner, Hiruzen said as his door was roughly forced open by 2 Anbu agents who were holding a boy with yellow hair and sulking, their bodies stiff and still. The Hokage only looked at the picture and nursed his headache. Wrong turn. Naruto tried to shake off the Anbu agent's hand, but the agent grabbed him by the shoulder and stopped him from running away. Yo, hey Gigi. Look, there's been a mix up. I'm not the Naruto Uzumaki these agents are looking for. So I'll just go get my stuff and get out of your hair, he said. Hokage. Sama, we apprehended Naruto Uzumaki under the crimes and violations of property damage, exposed danger to civilians, flying, and the unnecessary destruction of cabbages and threatening innocents, as well as testing possible dangerous seals without supervision, said the Anbu. He said sarcastically, yeah, sure he was innocent. The Hokage gave him a mean look, but it didn't scare him. The Anbu told Naruto, don't worry, Hokage. Sama. We see people like this all the time. Wrong choices, dead ends, useless, no future, a simple loser. Naruto glared at them, and the agents left. Naruto. I am at the end of my patience. For once, can you stay out of trouble? The only who doesn't benefit from this situation is you. Can't you just make simple fuinjutsu rather than ones that might blow up the entire village? You have potential and a bright future, but you're squandering that future on things that don't matter, like that disc of yours. I know you have great ideas, but sometimes those ideas are put to the wrong use. You're a fuinjutsu genius, so, please, just make simple ones from now on. So just please think about your future. The blonde didn't say anything other than slowly walking out the door, back to his home. Naruto. Look at me. I am the Hokage. It's hard enough watching over a village while you are off doing your own thing, creating chaos wherever you go. Naruto said, it's not a big deal. No one was hurt, and people are always looking for a reason to put me down. Hiruzen looked at the blonde with frozen eyes. You know what, forget it. Why do I go out of the way, creating wondrous things if no one even gives them a chance? You're the one who inspired me that if I can do good, why not make it great? My seals can save lives, and yet no one cares, other than the seal was made by me. Naruto, I just don't want to see you waste your life with your nose stuck in those seals. I don't want your future to be the same as it is now, Hiruzen said. Naruto left Hiruzen's words and went back to his apartment, but not before making sure to get the Tsubasa from the Anabu. The blonde asked, what future? As he looked himself in the mirror. There would always be the same thing going on for him in the village if he stayed there. He will never get ahead in life if he stays in the village. While Hiruzen buried his hands in his chest, the Hokage's friend said, I can see why you need me. He didn't know what to do with that kid. He doesn't care if he's remembered, he just cares if he helped, just a little at a time. The woman with purple hair nodded sadly at the Hokage and asked, if anyone can hammer sense into him, it would be you. Can I trust you to do this, Anko? She knew that the young Jinchuriki was having problems. And she was one of the few people who cared about him. After getting back to his apartment, Naruto rolled his flying disc into one of his closets. He would need to change some of the seals on the real flying object later. Naruto. Sama. You have returned. Shall I brew some green tea at your leisure? Asked a voice, and Naruto turned his head to see where the voice was coming from. They were about the height of a young woman and had shoulder-length gray hair. It had white eyes without pupils and a black sclera. It was dressed from head to toe in brown rags and a simple purple belt. But their skin was brown and like wood, and it creaked a lot when they moved. Such as wood. Naruto sat down at his desk and looked over pieces of paper from his seal. Yes, please do, Koa. Can you also bring me the notes on the Zencho? I want to look over them and see if I've made any mistakes. Koa asked Naruto. Sama, I have a question. Naruto waved his hand to let she continue. When I was accompanying you through the village, I noticed behavior from the citizens that didn't match my data. I recorded them, glaring at you with what is presumed to be animosity. According to my seal, humans should not react in such a way unless provoked, or a traumatic event happened in their life to create such animosity. I found no such evidence of you giving them any logic to treat you in such a way. My question is, why? Asked Koa, and Naruto stared at her. Every creature in this world fears that which can hurt them. Similar to how you carry my memories and thoughts. You know how I would react to a situation. I carry something within me that the people of this village are powerless against, thus they naturally fear me, and the great beast within me took much from them," replied Naruto, and Koa tilted her as she realized. "I am impressed with your continued existence, Naruto. Sama. The likelihood of surviving as long as you have is low for someone in your situation. The most preferred escape route for someone in your situation is to take their own life, preventing others from doing the same," Koa said. Naruto looked at his puppet with horrified eyes as the puppet stood there expressionless. "Thank you. Thank you, and welcome. I have more questions, but I can tell you don't want to answer them, so I'll wait until another time when your behavior is more helpful to my questions," Koa told Naruto as she gave him a cup of green tea. Naruto sipped it slowly and enjoyed the taste. The puppet's attention was caught when Naruto said, "Koa." The wooden body turned to face its master. "If I die young, bury me outside in a field of flowers. Please. I see. You want your body to give nutrients to the plants so they can grow stronger and do better. Great. I'll do that," Koa said, nodding at Naruto. Naruto sighed. That wasn't really the reason. He wanted to be buried in a flower field because he thought the flowers would make him feel better at the end. After hearing a voice ask, "So what you doing?" Naruto turned around and saw a woman behind him looking through some of his things, especially his seals. Her violet hair was pulled back into a short, spiked, fan-shaped ponytail. Her light brown eyes did not have pupils. She was dressed in a dark orange miniskirt, a tan overcoat, and a mesh bodysuit that went from her neck to her thighs. She wore a necklace that looked like a snake fang and gray shin guards. She was eating dango and looking over Naruto's seals when several tick marks showed up on his head. The boy then hit her and knocked the paper off her hands. Naruto blurted out, "Okay, who are you? And how did you get in here?" His anger was boiling over. Anko sat down on Naruto's bed and said, "It's called the front door, and I'm sure you have one." The blonde yelled at her again for being rude. Naruto yelled, "That's it. Koa. Kick her out." To the puppet, which turned its head to look at its master, who was staring at her blankly. "No. I didn't program you to be disobedient. I am able to detect that this woman means no harm to you." Naruto yelled, "I don't care. She's being annoying," as he turned red in the face from all the annoying people bothering him. "Look kid, the old man put me in charge of you. He doesn't want you to blow up the village, that's why I'm here. But hey, think of this as training. You'll be surrounded by a beautiful woman with such a killer figure that you'll learn not to give in to your urges," Anko told Naruto straight out. Naruto blushed a little at her attempts to sex him. Naruto crossed his arms and said, "So basically, Gigi sent me a whore." He didn't feel the evil feeling of dread wash over him because, before he knew it, someone was punching him in the ground. "Oh my god, I don't dress this way just to make you laugh. Anko Mitarashi, your new handler and friend," Anko said, but she didn't know that Naruto might still be unconscious on the ground. "Well, anyway. The old man has given you the important duty of completing D rank missions as punishment for that whole mess with that flying machine you made. Let's go," Anko said, pulling Naruto out of his apartment while Koa stood there confused. The owner of the cabbage cart that Naruto had destroyed with his last minute landing plan yelled, "Make sure to pick up every cabbage." While going back to his work, Naruto muttered, "Whatever. They're just cabbages." He was upset that he couldn't bring Koa with him, because that would have made the job go much faster. Anko, on the other hand, wasn't too far away. She was eating dango and keeping an eye on her ward from a safe distance. A person in the village who was watching Naruto from his point of view said, "It's that kid. Guess that's the only thing he's good at." And Anko could hear what he said, but she mostly didn't pay attention to it. Another person in the village said, "Hokage Sama should care about us more. I mean, he's like a bomb ready to go off." This made Anko grip her fist in an angry way. "That thing is better off dead," Naruto said as he turned around in anger. Naruto yelled, "I'm not a it. Or would you rather I kill you right now?" His eyes turned red, his hair got a little wilder, and 4 big black ropes with silver blades shot out from behind him, scaring everyone on the street. The weapons in front of her were so scary that even Anko had to widen her eyes. The ropes pulled back into Naruto's back before she knew it, and he ran off somewhere. Anko ran after Naruto, which wasn't too hard since he wasn't even a student yet and wasn't fast enough to beat a shinobi. See, I keep telling you he's dangerous. After following him through the village, she found him sitting on top of the Shodem Hokage with his knees pulled up to his chest. Anko said, "That was so rude, kid," while Naruto just narrowed his eyes and watched the sun go down. "I wouldn't kill her, it was just a scare tactic. That's all." Naruto was still looking out over the village that hated him as Anko walked up to him and said, "But still, try that again and something bad will bite you in the ass." Anko's whole face turned sad when Naruto said, "Why do good things or help others if no one appreciates it? There's no point. They don't believe that there is one good thing inside me. If I was to leave the village right now, one would stop me. But where would I go? I have no family, no friends. My own clan was destroyed when Uzushiogakure was destroyed and the elders won't allow me access to the Uzumaki shrine or estate here in the village. I've never had a real home, at least one that can't be destroyed easily. Hell, what do I know? I just keep running, hiding till they find me when the villagers are really drunk or high on whatever shit they got a hold of. But what would that do? They always find me. If they could only know what I knew. What would it prove? That I'm smarter than them, they would judge me as too dangerous and attack me anyway. What do I have that they don't? Simple answer." Anko let out a sad sigh, her eyes prevented from hearing those words. Anko told the young man, "Just meet me here tomorrow morning. You still have work to do." She then left him to stew on the mountain. She thought about how hard things would get from now on. Next day, Naruto came over and saw Anko chewing on some dango as if it were the most holy thing in the world. Naruto's job for the day was to clean up the town from art that young punks had put up. As always, Anko was watching him. While his handler did her own thing, he had to clean up the clear signs of rebellion. "You know, this would go a lot faster if you helped." Or I don't know, a motivational quote, "Heck, even an insult would be good right now," Naruto said as he scrubbed away with all his might. Anko laughed a little. As Anko watched from a distance, she stretched her arms out and her back. "And where's the fun in that? You have to do this over and over and over again until the Sandame says you've done enough," she said. Naruto said with a scowl on his face, "Yeah, this is just him telling me that I don't really matter other than being the village trash collector. But I'm still here," the boy said as he went back to work. Anko gave him a small raised eyebrow. It had been a month, and Naruto and Anko were definitely closer. From the small talk they shared, it was like they were brother and sister. What Naruto used to think of as work could now be called making a memory. They would make fun of each other, buy each other food, like dumplings and ramen, and just talk. In the beginning, after doing the D-rank missions, chores, Naruto would go off on his own, leaving Anko behind. But she would always get up and find him, following an animal like a tail. Even the boy had stood up to the Jonin and refused to do the work sometimes. He was always hit in the head for this. The woman thought that he was just being independent. But everything that was known about him showed that he wanted to be alone because he grew up alone. His work would be done faster, which would allow him to leave and make more seals more quickly. He would sometimes just stand there staring at the sky for no reason, as if no one was looking. He was so determined to finish the job that he would even kill himself. One time he fell asleep and woke up to find everything clean and in order. He was cold, so she threw her coat over him to keep him warm. When Naruto let Anko fly through the clouds with him on the Kemari, it showed how close they had become. Now, though, things have changed. With some help from Koa, Naruto had made his greatest work yet. He knew how to use sealing to help sick people get better and burn off wounds. He called it an ingenious device. This is the Zench. Made up of 5 seals that work together to create a new effect that can't be seen. Naruto was going to show off the Zencho's power to anyone who was interested, mostly the Hokage, the elders of Konoha, and the council, but he didn't want them to be there. He stood there in front of all the judges' eyes, except for Hiruzen's and Danzo's, who were looking forward to seeing what would happen. A member of the civilian council asked in a rude voice, "Tell us, thing. What is this so-called Zencho supposed to do?" Naruto just glared at the person and didn't think much of it. Naruto spoke, "After weeks of research and constant testing, I have found a way to heal wounds as if they never happened." Anko could be seen cheering him on in the corner. This effect was caused by taking 5 seals and working on them all at the same time. "The Zencho is the sum of everything," Naruto said as he reached into his shirt and pulled out a small blue ball. "Really not even as big as a fingernail. This is the key to the Zencho. It's an object called the Maebor. With it, I can control all 5 seals at once. But you have to be very focused and concentrate to use it correctly, so only people with experience should try this, Naruto said as he held the blue orb up to the Zencho, which made it glow a little brighter. Then he pulled out a kunai and cut his arm pretty badly. The cut hurt a little, and blood ran down his arm. As he fell into a deep state of focus and concentration, his eyes turned completely clear blue, and the lines where his whiskers were on his cheeks flashed blue. And blue lightning shot straight at Naruto's arm so fast that if someone blinks, they would miss it. The lightning completely healed his wound, leaving not even a mark. A bandaged old badger in the room kept a serious face but held back his excitement. Many people in the room were mesmerized by what they saw. One pair of eyes, on the other hand, wasn't sure about the show and got up to walk over to Naruto. It was dangerous when a member of the civilian council pushed Naruto away and grabbed the Maebor from his hand. This is a farce. Nothing more than a trick of the eyes. How can we trust? Naruto yelled, "No, don't." But it was too late. The man holding the Maebor was weak. Willed and couldn't stop all the raging seals at once. The council member was hit by the Zench's violent winds. There was blue lightning all around and it hit the man across the body. No one could do anything but watch as the member of the civilian council suddenly fell to the ground. His eyes burned so badly that they hurt. Naruto slowly walked up to the man who had his hand on his forehead. It was gone, or rather, it was destroyed. The man's chakra was broken. Naruto looked down at his hand and said, "He's dead." He thought he was a monster. He looked up and saw that everyone on the council was staring at him with terrible fear. What he saw shocked even the Hokage. While Danzo smiled for a moment at what the Uzumaki's invention could mean. Naruto ran out of the room and into the rain outside the Hokage mansion because he couldn't stand having so many eyes on him. Anko ran after him as he watched his form run away. He was on top of the Shodem Hokage's head, just like she had seen him before. He was in the same place she found him a month ago. She then sat down next to him and wrapped her arm around his shoulders. He didn't say anything or shrug it off. Naruto stood up and ran his hands through his wet, muddy hair, cutting short Anko's words. He didn't care to hear them. It wasn't your fault. It was all an accident. Who knows what would have happened? Sulking about it won't change a thing. Naruto said as he fell back to the ground, "Look. Don't you get it? I messed up. I tried to make something great. Something to be proud of. And it was all for nothing. Maybe I could do something right. Forget it. Just forget it." But his older sister figure wouldn't take that as an answer. She said that only real shinobi could be strong in hard times. "Now you listen to me. Naruto Uzumaki. You have the potential to be everything you want to be in you. But as soon as something goes wrong you tuck tail and run. You have to endure no matter the pain and carve out your own path. Find an ideal you can live by and follow it to the very end no matter what people say. And when the time comes to test out everything you have learned, I hope I'll be there, basking in the light of the sun when you stand there. As Hokage." Anko struck something within Naruto as he turned towards her. He wiped his tears away and gave Anko a hug as tight as he could. The woman was shocked by the gesture. Anko hugged Naruto back and said, "It's okay, Naruto. Everything will be okay. As long as I'm around, I won't leave you." They sat there for 5 minutes, both brother and sister talking about how they felt. There are times when we all want to give up and think we have nothing left to lose. It's at those times that we need to lean on someone else's shoulders to be saved from the pit of darkness we dug ourselves. You made something truly spectacular. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Anko then left, thinking Naruto wanted to be alone for now. To think about what went on. After she left, the shadows began to move. Naruto got ready, but he was too late. A small dart stung his neck where he took it off to look at how it was made before his eyes got heavy and he passed out. He woke up with heavy eyes and was lying on something wet and hard. After getting up and dusting himself off, he looked around him. It was dark, just like darkness is. He didn't know where he was because there was no light to be seen. But he couldn't come to a decision. Just then, he heard the sound of a door opening, so he turned around to see what it was. A man by himself. Being in the doorway. The blonde, scared and eager for help, screamed for it and found that it shut behind him, leaving him in the dark. He yelled for his guardian, Anko, at the top of his lungs. But as he fell to his knees, he got no answer. End of flashback. He jerked awake as he remembered the memory, and one eye flashed open. He looked around him and saw nothing but darkness. There was fabric around his eyes that made it hard for him to see what was going on around him. The blonde stood up and traced along the edges of the cloth with his left hand. He then pulled on some of it to show his single sapphire eye, which was his right eye. Now having a better look at his atmosphere. A plain hospital room that was so white and dull that it almost made him want to throw up. He had no one with him. He was by himself, and when he looked to his right, he saw the broken pieces of his right arm on his shoulder. The person he really wanted to see then walked in, making a creaking sound as the door opened. The voice of Naruto whispered, "Conan." Conan was startled by the new voice as she saw the broken man sitting up in his own bed. "I know it sounds corny, but I'm glad that you're okay," Naruto said. The woman with blue hair quickly wrapped her arms around him and cried on his shoulder. He took some of her warmth in by wrapping his other arm around her small frame. Conan hugged the blonde even tighter and said, "You damn idiot, don't you ever think? You could have died." "I think too much. It leaves holes in my mind." "All I could think about was your safety," Naruto said as he pulled himself out of Conan's arms and looked at the woman. Naruto said, "This is a painful reminder. Obito is much stronger than I thought. He plans to kill me in our inevitable battle. I have to get stronger." He said this as he tried to push himself out of bed but fell like a bag and his right leg wouldn't move. Kanan ran around the bed and helped him get back on it. As Conan helped him into bed, she told him, "You're not fit to move. Those wounds just healed, and now you're trying to open them up again. That's just like you." He protested in silence. "You've been resting for a week, and you need more rest to heal your wounds." Where Conan bit her lip in doubt, the blonde asked, "How much damage did I suffer?" "The intense light of the flames damaged your left eye, maybe your cornea, I'm not too sure. The gash across your stomach almost spilled your internal organs and certainly damaged your lower torso. You clearly lost your right arm. And when the Tonbogiri was broken, shards were embedded into your right leg, shredding your muscles and effectively stopping you from walking on your right leg. Hiriko and I decided it was best to leave the shards in there, and remove them when we were ready." Spoke in Conan while Naruto nodded at her and hid his left eye with his other arm. Then he felt something being put on his lap. It was a bundle of cloth that he unfolded to reveal the Tonbogiri's handle. "That's all that's left of the sword," Naruto said, staring at the broken metal with a thoughtful look on his face. "Why did it snap?" the blonde asked. "What made me break?" He tried to use his special healing mode, but it didn't work. A white mist wasn't spreading over his body to heal his wounds. Naruto nodded at Conan to confirm what she said, "You can't heal yourself. Hiriko and I discovered that it was actually a seal, healing your wounds. Exciting your life. Forced to heal your injuries. We had to deactivate it to properly treat you." Naruto asked Conan, "Orshi no Shudwan, teachings of the monastery, as a seal? Not some natural ability?" Conan replied, "Yes. So I assume you have some plan to give me back my right arm." Hiriko had yelled that he knew of a correct donor and that he would be taking samples from that. "I have no idea what he meant," Conan said. Naruto widened his eyes, which meant that his latest plan had worked out. That it had finally grown up and could finally be put to use. It was hard to grow such a project, but like a flower, it just needed time and care. The blonde said to Conan, "I'd like you to stay with me for a little while." She then turned away from Conan and laid down in his bed. The woman with blue hair smiled at him and pushed a chair over to him. She then watched as the Uzumaki fell asleep peacefully. If only he could do that right now. He would have to go through the worst times of his life again. Flashback. "You like the demon, you coddle him, Hokage. Sama." Spoke a civilian council member to the Hokage, who waved him off and his excuses to get rid of Naruto. After the whole calamity with the Zensho, fear has rightfully taken his place. He could have been planning to kill us whole in that show of his. We should use that fear to take control of the people, warn them against his threat. Naruto is an asset to Konoha that we simply cannot lose. What happened was an accident and you'd best leave it at that. Warned the Hokage, but the councilman wouldn't back down from his words. You oppose every effort to punish the demon for his crimes while allowing to roam free is a danger. His reign of chaos is seeping its way into our hearts. Return to your home, this farce of yours ends here. I will not continue this discussion with a delusional fool," said Hiruzen, turning around sharply to face the councilman. "There are some who disagree with the choices you made. Hokage Sama. You hide behind your own cloak as soon as trouble arises. Or do you fear what we have to say? I fear nothing. And I can speak for myself regarding my own thoughts. And my only interest has and always will be the stability of Konoha in the will of fire, passed down from one Hokage to the next. And what are you trying to do here, cause an uprising? Do you wish for blood that much?" questioned the Hokage while the man didn't back down from his words. "The people of the village must know what is happening. And what? They tear down the Hokage monument with fire and weapons. Would that be better? It cannot be worse. Your stubbornness and refusal to listen to reason leaves me no choice," rebuked the man, to which Hiruzen narrowed his eyes dangerously. "What I refuse to listen to is excuses and bigotry. Maybe you're too ill fit to your position if you cannot understand even this," replied Hiruzen, surprising the man at his words. "Leave, before I have my Anbu escort you back to your premises," ordered Hiruzen gruffly, where said council member turned on heel and left. Hiruzen slinked his way back into his office where he massaged the growing migraine. For once he would like to go through one day where he wouldn't have to deal with such bullshit. Just as he sat down, Anko walked through the door, a worried expression on her face. "Hokage Sama. Have you seen Naruto? It's been 2 weeks since that incident with the Zencho and I haven't seen him at his home or around the village," spoke Anko while Hiruzen shrugged off her worry. It wasn't uncharacteristic of Naruto to take leaves of absence. "I'm sure he's fine. He's a resourceful and clever as a fox, he'll turn up, he needs his space, that's all," spoke the Hokage while Anko had doubts. Elsewhere, in a dark and damp place with no light. Acute grunting echoing through the darkness, the sound of nails grinding against the ground. The gritting of teeth and silent screams. A body emaciated beyond recognition, shaggy hair that reached shoulders. His hunger was far too great. Constantly scraping his nails against the ground until they were bloodied and stinging in uproar. Trails of the blood from his fingers and toes were scattered throughout the room. Desperate attempts to claw his way out to freedom. He couldn't use his chakra. Whoever locked him in were smart enough to strip him of his power. He could feel himself slowly going insane. A constant ringing in his ears, an itch at the back of his mind. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to get out. No food, no water, he could feel his stomach burning, screaming from within, his throat was parched and was more like sand. Paper. His body felt heavy, weighted in a way. Tears streaming down his eyes, he pushed himself up and rammed head first against the hard metal door barring him from the outside world. "Let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out," yelled Naruto again and again as he beat his bloody fists against the metal door, practically trying to force them open with his near-broken fingers. "I didn't do anything," said the boy as he slumped to the ground, defeated and broken. Tears continued to fall as his stomach roared in starvation. He was like a caged animal, able to see freedom but never grasping it. The single door taunted him, showing just how weak he was. Gashes and cuts were spread over his fingers, and he had lost a nail or two. Whoever came up with this idea was a truly depraved individual with little to no humanity. They were nothing more than a psychopath, actively looking for violence. His body was gripping as if someone had a hand on his spine, clenching his limbs and breaking them apart. They threw him in this basement and forgot about him, or simply ignored him. Whichever one it was slowly killing him, a painful death. He was almost at the point that he was practically begging for death, dying in the dark. Tears continuing to fall, he scanned his eyes across the dark room. Wondering just what he had to deserve any of this. He may be a Jinchuriki, but he and the fox were two separate entities that share the same body. "Where's Anko?" whispered Naruto, his dry throat making it difficult to speak. 2 weeks had passed and he found no way out. He wanted death, demanded it so much that it was all he was thinking about. He found himself chanting, "Kill me," again and again like a song stuck on replay. If one were to look at him, they would barely see his mouth moving. It actually didn't appear that he was breathing. He was so weak, so emaciated that one could even see his bones through his skin. His hair, from great golden locks like the sun, had become parched, near bleached in fact. His stomach and body twisted and contorted, racking with pain in each second. But one thing that was certain was the tears still streaming down his eyes. He had enough, he just had enough. A wolf has many teeth, but it felt like his were broken long ago. He could barely stay awake, his eyes, losing the blue and taking on a murky color. Just to stay sane, to stay alive. He counted just how many droplets of water he could hear, dripping constantly from above, leaking through the roof and sides. 4,783. 4,784. Kill me. 4,785. 4,786. Kill me. Like a clock. His fingers were bloody where said blood had dried and become black. He wondered slightly if anyone was looking for him, though he doubted that greatly if he was still down here. That itch in the back of his mind had become loud chanting, telling him to do awful things. The ringing in his ears were more akin to that of a bell, banging loudly. This torture, this brutality had broken him. He screamed in abject pain, choking on his own dry throat. His whole world then became blank and gray, with large white holes sucking in the gray. He had no idea where he was, but it wasn't like he cared either way. Guess he figured that it was his inner mind. This is the way of life they chose for me. This is the future they chose for me. Thought Naruto as he screamed, falling onto his knees. If my parents really loved me, they wouldn't have sacrificed me for a village not even worth saving. They're both weak. Father. Mother. Why? Why did you both leave me alone? I hate you both. I hate being alone. Why? Why didn't you choose me? Why didn't you both live for me? The words of corpses mean nothing. Even if you forsook the village. You should have chosen me. I don't care if people died. I don't care what happens to them. I feel nothing for them. Screamed Naruto, internally crying out to his deceased parents, and within his little world, red flowers appeared, as beautiful as the morning sun, but red as blood, and little by little some of the flowers were wilting and dying, becoming gray. You must sacrifice one thing to preserve the other. You both couldn't do that, you couldn't choose. That wasn't kindness or bravery, it's because you were both weak. You both don't have strength or resolve. You weren't true shinobi. I am. A warlord. Don't worry from here on out. I'll be here to protect you. Spoke another voice where Naruto looked up to see another version of himself. Only with shaggier hair, more wild whiskers and red eyes. Just leave everything to me. I won't leave you. Ever. Said the other Naruto where all the flowers died around them. Outside the very same door a young girl, holding a teddy bear in her arms, inspected it with a curious innocent gaze. Daddy says not to go in there. But he never says why? Said the small girl as she took hold of the doorknob and twisted, noting that it could only be opened from one side, since the other side was noticeably lacking a doorknob itself. When she opened up the door, she was immediately beset with a dark void. She wasn't able to contemplate further when red eyes snapped open in the darkness and 3 black ropes with silver blades attached flew from the darkness and impaled her in the stomach. Lifting her up in the air, making her blood fly all around and causing her to scream in pain before she was slammed to the ground. The teddy bear she was holding was drenched in blood, a cruel symbol of how easily innocence was destroyed. A thin and wispy shadow then rose from the darkness, his eyes were red and his teeth were bared. Naruto slowly walked over the corpse of the young girl, not caring for her in the slightest. From hearing the noise, the mother of the girl ran down from her stairs and stared in horror and grief at the Jinchuriki standing over her child's corpse. As if he walked through a field of corpses and remaining unperturbed. The mother, reacting in such a natural way, rushed at Naruto, who had been taken over by his second personality. The thing known as Hunna instinct. The emaciated and skeletal boy disappeared in a flurry and quickly appeared behind the woman, where deep cuts into her entire body, including her face, appeared and blood exploded from her wounds. Blood like water, sweet and warm. Nails biting, chewing, bleeding on ground. Died in the dark, make others hurt. Said Naruto as he held his head in his hands. He was unable to say anything else when ambu soldiers descended through the hard wooden roof, and slammed seals on the ground to restrain Naruto's movements. Hokage. Sama, we found him. A civilian was holding him in his underground basement. I'm sorry, we couldn't save the family in time. Said the ambu captain, radioing his Hokage, who sighed sadly. Hiruzen was outside of the house with the man responsible for Naruto's torture being held to the ground by Anbu. By his side was Inoichi Yamanaka, Ibiki Morino and Anko Mitarashi. There was nothing we could do in the end. Spoke the Hokage, saddened by recent events. He then received more information about Naruto's current state of mind, babbling about how he was going to kill those who hurt him and savor their blood. A dark and grisly reminder of what happened. Inoichi, Ibiki, what could have happened that drove Naruto to this point? Questioned the old man, where Anko narrowed her eyes in sorrow, knowing she had failed in her duty. Given what happened, and the sheer amount of time he spent in that place, no food or water, I'm surprised he didn't starve to death. It's quite possible his mind was unable to handle the slow death and so created a second personality to protect the dominant one. Spoke Ibiki as he approached the where Naruto was brought out of the house, knocked out and having water being forced down his throat so to keep him alive. This violent new personality is a danger to Naruto himself and those around him. If what the captain says is true, he will regard anyone as a danger and attack out of pure fear and instinct. Like that child and her mother. I'm afraid it will take years of mental rehabilitation to restore Naruto to the way he was, and even then he won't be forgetting this experience. Said Inoichi, backing up Ibiki, who nodded at the man. As for his torturer, Anko, who was listening, had to hold back every urge to kill this man, right in front of her. To do that to a child of all people, and now he has suffered from his choices, but she wondered what the Hokage would do. Said man then turned to the civilian. His glare steely and cold. As Hokage of Konoha, I hereby judge your acts as inhuman. Not only have your decisions cost the life of a young boy, but also your family. Death would be too forgiving. You shall no longer be considered a member of Konoha and are now no longer welcome within its walls. If you do not leave in the next 6 hours, my Anbu shall regard you as hostile and eliminate you. Spoke Hiruzen, to which the man fell to his knees and bawled his eyes out and left with nothing but the clothes on his back, while many on the street watched with horror, for Hokage doing that to an innocent man who had only done the right thing. As for Naruto, Anko, I relieve Naruto of your custody. I do not blame you for what has happened, but given the boy's state of mind, he must hold feelings of betrayal towards you. Instead, I shall have him placed in the care of Inoichi and Ibiki, where they can properly treat high. However, Hiruzen was silenced from speaking further with the arrival of a new voice. This will only prove to be fruitless in the end. Rather than cure him of this current predicament. Instead, why don't you place him into my care, where instead of suppressing the Hana, he will channel it. Make it his weapon to use against the enemies of Konoha. My emotional training will be of most root. Place him under my custody within root, and I assure you, I will make him a weapon to serve the good of Konoha. Spoke Danzo, hobbling over with his cane. Hiruzen stared at Danzo, unsure if he should give in to his friend's demands. He then stared back at the unconscious Naruto and sighed heavily. Very well. Though if under any impression that Naruto proves to still be a danger, I will take the drastic action of sealing away his abilities, memories and even the Hun. No. I expect weekly reports of his well-being. And Danzo, betray this trust and I'll ensure you never become Hokage. Said Hiruzen as Danzo bowed and took his leave, where he had his root agents pick up Naruto's body and brought him to his base to be inducted into root. This was the birth of Tekurufu, the Iron Wolf. Flashback end. Danzo was walking through his base in root, his mind swirling in thought about his next move. I received your summons. Tell me, what little game are you playing this time? Said a voice, where an elderly man appeared from the shadows. He had long wavy gray hair that reached his shoulders and mutton chops that reached his beard. He had stern yellow eyes and brown brows. He was wearing a black shirt with a white GI with brown and blue edges and a sleeveless red jacket and simple blue pants. Akihiro Shino. Spoke Danzo as the other man nodded at him. I trust you find the lab to your liking. Very much so, I'll be able to carry out my experiments without constraint. With the samples you collected, I'll be able to begin work shortly. Root agents have a much durable body than those of normal shinobi. Combined with a near unfathomable vitality, they'll be the greatest soldiers in the world. Said Shino, making Danzo smirk at him. I do hope you can supply enough of your men towards my experiments. Still such a shame. Said Akihiro, where he joined Danzo as both walked towards his lab. To think that Naruto would grow up to be such a magnificent individual, you were wise to collect these samples. He was only a test subject at first, and now he has become something more than anyone could have dreamed. Sharingan, Garasutan, Rantan, and having mastered all forms of combat. An exceptional specimen indeed. And now you wish to disturb ashes none have touched for so long. Why is that? The weapon the Uzumaki clan have been hoarding lies within Uzushiogakure. I never had the right blood to access the weapon, but now. Let's just say things are different, said Danzo as he and Shino entered his lab, clean and shiny, not to mention new of course. They then approached a tank, filled with special liquid perfect for containing special specimens. But first, we just have to create more Narutos, said Danzo as he rubbed his hand across the tank currently containing Naruto's severed right arm, lost during the battle with Obito. Danzo smirked at the severed limb, how long he had been waiting for a trove of that boy's cells. The greatest gift the blonde could give, handed to him on a silver platter.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.